Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Universe Night. Tonight we are going to sit with something small enough to be brushed away without a thought, and old enough to have been used by hands that lived before written language settled into its final shapes. A spider's web, a gray scrap of silk in the corner of a barn. For thousands of years, across continents that had never heard of one another, healers reached for that silk and pressed it into open wounds, and the bleeding slowed, and the person lived, and no one could say precisely why. We will follow that question all the way down. We will look at what actually happens inside a cut in the first 4 seconds, when the body begins a chain of chemical signals so precise and so fast that it outruns thought. We will learn why a fine mesh of any kind gives blood something to hold on to, and why the shape of a surface can be as important as the substance it is made from. We will meet the spider itself, an animal that spins 7 different silks from 7 different glands and knows how to do it without ever being taught. We will hold a thread stronger for its weight than steel and softer than anything you have ever slept beneath. And we will find near the end that ancient healers were partly right, partly wrong, and that the truth underneath their mistake is stranger and more beautiful than the folk remedy ever was. Let your shoulders come down from where they have been holding all day. Let the jaw unclench. Let the breath get longer at the end, the way it does on its own when you stop supervising it. There is nothing tonight that requires your effort. The day is finished with you now, and you are allowed to let go of your grip on it. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. Let's begin. Ancient healers packed spider webs into open wounds for thousands of years. The practice appears in Greek medicine, in Roman military texts, in medieval European household books, in rural American folk remedies well into the 20th century, and in traditional healing across parts of Asia, Africa, and Australia. The instruction is remarkably consistent wherever it appears. Gather the web. Roll it between the fingers into a soft gray pad. Press it into the cut and hold. What is extraordinary about this is not that one culture believed it, but that so many arrived at it separately, with no contact between them, no shared texts, no common vocabulary. Imagine a map of the world with small lights appearing on it across 4,000 years, each one a person kneeling beside someone who is bleeding, reaching up into the rafters for the same gray thread. None of them knew about proteins. None of them knew about platelets. They knew only that it worked often enough to be worth remembering, and that remembering it was worth the trouble of teaching it to someone else. That is what a folk remedy actually is. Not superstition exactly, but the compressed memory of 10,000 small experiments no one wrote down. Some of that memory was wrong. Some of it was more right than anyone alive at the time could have explained. Pliny the Elder recorded cobwebs as a wound treatment in the 1st century. In his Natural History, an enormous compendium of everything the Roman world believed it knew, Pliny describes spider webs applied to cuts and to the small injuries of shaving. He was not a physician. He was a naval commander and an obsessive collector of claims, and his book gathers the accurate and the absurd side by side with no visible seam between them. He is right about some things and confidently wrong about a great many others. Yet this particular entry survived, copied by hand for 14 centuries, passing through monastery libraries and Arabic translations, and finally into printing presses. Picture a sentence about spider silk being written on a scroll by lamplight, then copied by a monk who has never seen the Mediterranean, then read by a physician in Bologna, then printed, then read again by a farmer's wife in Yorkshire who has never heard the name Pliny and simply knows that this is what you do. Knowledge does not always travel by proof. Sometimes it travels by repetition, carried forward by people who trusted the ones who came before them more than they trusted themselves. Dioscorides listed the spider's web among the medicines of the ancient world. He was a Greek physician who served with the Roman army in the 1st century, and his 5-volume work on medical substances, De Materia Medica, remained the central pharmacological reference in Europe and the Islamic world for more than 1,500 years. No other medical text has held authority for so long. Dioscorides was a careful observer by the standards of his age. He traveled with the legions, gathered plants himself, described where they grew and what they looked like, and how they should be prepared, and he distinguished between what he had seen and what he had been told. Among the hundreds of substances he catalogued, the web appears quietly, without drama, as a thing you might apply to superficial wounds and to inflammation of the eyes. There is something moving about the ordinariness of it. A man walking behind an army through Anatolia, noticing the corners of things, writing down what the local people used when there was nothing else. Most of what he wrote has been superseded. But his method, look closely and write it down plainly, is still the whole of science. Celsus described stopping the flow of blood as one of surgery's first obligations. Aulus Cornelius Celsus, writing in Latin around the reign of Tiberius, produced a work called De Medicina that is startling to read even now. He describes the 4 signs of inflammation, redness and swelling and heat and pain, in words still taught to medical students 2,000 years later. He describes wound closure, the removal of foreign bodies, the ligature of vessels, the necessity of cleanliness. He understood that a bleeding vessel could be tied, though the technique would be lost and rediscovered more than once in the centuries after him. His world had no anesthesia and no antisepsis. Surgery meant speed and nerve, and a patient held down by strong friends. Reading Celsus is like finding a clear window in a wall of fog, a moment when someone looked directly at the body and reported what they saw without mythology in the way. It is a reminder that clarity is not a modern invention. It has appeared and disappeared and appeared again throughout our history, and every time it vanished, someone eventually had to work it out from the beginning. The Ebers Papyrus prescribed dressings of honey, lint, and grease more than 3,000 years ago. This Egyptian medical scroll, roughly 20 meters long and dating to around 1550 BCE, contains hundreds of remedies, many of them ineffective, some of them magical incantations, and a handful that modern research has vindicated in detail. The honey is the striking one. Honey is genuinely antibacterial. It is hygroscopic, drawing water out of bacterial cells. It is acidic, and many varieties generate small amounts of hydrogen peroxide through an enzyme the bee adds during production. Medical-grade honey is used in wound clinics today, sterilized by gamma irradiation and sold in sealed tubes for burns and ulcers that resist other treatment. The Egyptians could not have known any of the chemistry. They knew that wounds dressed with honey went bad less often. 3,500 years separate that observation from its explanation, and the explanation did not make the observation any more true than it already was. Traditional healers on separate continents arrived at the same idea without ever meeting. Cobwebs for bleeding appear in European folk practice, in parts of China, in rural India, in the traditions of some Aboriginal Australian communities, and among settlers and indigenous peoples across the Americas. Convergence like this is one of the most interesting phenomena in the history of medicine. It tends to happen when a treatment produces an effect that is immediate, visible, and repeatable, because those are the conditions under which a single person can notice a pattern in a single lifetime. Bleeding is exactly that kind of problem. You can see it start and you can see it stop. Compare this to a treatment for a slow disease, where cause and effect are separated by months, and the noise of ordinary recovery drowns the signal. Those remedies vary wildly from culture to culture, because nobody could tell what was working. The remedies that converge are the ones where reality pushed back hard enough and fast enough to be felt. Truth leaves fingerprints even on people who have no idea they are handling it. Cobwebs appear in English household medicine books for more than 3 centuries. From the 17th century onward, printed books of domestic remedies were among the most widely owned volumes in ordinary homes, second in many households only to the Bible. They contained recipes for pies and for poultices in the same volume, because there was no meaningful separation between the two skills. A woman running a farmhouse was expected to manage cuts, burns, fevers, births, and deaths, usually without a physician within a day's ride. The Cobweb entry sits in these books alongside instructions for treating a scalded hand and preserving quinces. Imagine the shelf in a stone kitchen, the book swollen with damp, opened so often at certain pages that those pages fall out first. Most of medical history was not made in universities. It was made by people with no title and no training, in bad light, doing the best they could with what was hanging in the corner of the room. Surgeons in the American Civil War reached for cobwebs when supplies ran out. The war produced wounds on a scale that overwhelmed every existing stem of care. Field hospitals ran short of lint, of bandages, of everything. Accounts from the period describe cobwebs used to pack bleeding wounds, particularly in the Confederate Army, where the naval blockade made medical supply chronically scarce. This was not a triumph of folk wisdom. It was desperation, and it happened in an era when surgeons still operated in blood-stiffened coats and considered a well-used probe a sign of experience. The infection rates were catastrophic. Something like 2/3 of the deaths in that war came from disease rather than from battle. Picture a tent in Virginia in July, a surgeon who has not slept in 2 days, a line of men outside that does not short. He uses what is within reach. Medicine has always been practiced at the edge of what it understands, and the people doing it rarely have the luxury of waiting for certainty to arrive. 19th century American physicians rolled spider web into pills for fever. This is the strange tail end of the cobweb tradition. In the 1800s, particularly in the American South and Midwest, spider web was collected, rolled into small pills, and given orally as a treatment for the intermittent fevers of malaria. It appears in the medical literature of the time as a genuine subject of debate, with physicians reporting successes and others reporting nothing at all. There is no plausible mechanism. The apparent successes were almost certainly the natural rhythm of malarial fever, which rises and falls in cycles and can appear to respond to whatever was administered just before it fell on its own. This is the shape of nearly every failed remedy in history. Not fraud, but a real pattern in the disease being mistaken for a pattern in the cure. It is a reminder that the human mind is a magnificent instrument for detecting patterns and a poor one for testing them, and that the entire apparatus of controlled trials exists to protect us from our own best faculty. Wound infection killed far more people than wounds themselves for most of human history. Before the germ theory of disease was accepted in the late 19th century, an injury that did not kill you quickly might still kill you slowly. Surgeons spoke of laudable pus, believing that the discharge from a wound was a sign of healing rather than of infection. Hospitals were more dangerous than homes. A compound fracture, where bone breaks the skin, carried a mortality rate that made amputation the reasonable choice. Into this world, a handful of dusty spider web pressed into an open cut is not obviously a good idea. Webs collect soil, spores, and whatever else drifts through the air of a barn. Clostridium tetani, the organism that causes tetanus, lives in dust and soil and thrives in exactly the low oxygen conditions of a packed wound. The remedy that stopped the bleeding could also carry the thing that finished the job. Ancient medicine was rarely simply wrong. It was usually a real effect and a real danger tangled together, with no way for anyone to pull the two apart. Your skin is the largest organ you have, and it is mostly a wall. An adult carries roughly 2 square meters of it, weighing somewhere between 3 and 5 kilograms. It is a layered structure, and the outermost layer, the stratum corneum, is composed of cells that are already dead, flattened into overlapping plates and cemented together with lipids. You are wrapped in a thin brick wall made of your own former cells. This wall keeps water in and keeps the world out, and the world is very interested in getting in. Your skin's surface carries something like 1 trillion bacteria, most of them harmless where they are and dangerous a single millimeter deeper. A cut is not merely damage. It is a breach in a border that has been held continuously since before you were born. The body treats it as exactly that kind of emergency, and the response it mounts is not a repair so much as a military operation with a sealing crew, a chemical alarm, a demolition team, and a rebuilding program that will still be running a year from now. All of this begins automatically, in silence, while you are busy being annoyed about the cut. Blood is not a liquid. It is a tissue that happens to flow. We think of it as red fluid because that is how it behaves when it leaves us, but blood is a living tissue in the same sense that muscle or bone is. Roughly 55% of it is plasma, itself a complex solution of water, salts, hormones, antibodies, and hundreds of proteins. The rest is cells and cell fragments. Red cells, which have discarded their own nuclei to make room for more oxygen-carrying hemoglobin, number around 25 trillion in an adult body. White cells patrol for intruders. Platelets, smallest of all, drift through the current doing nothing at all until they are needed. An adult carries about 5 liters of this, and it completes a full circuit of the body roughly once a minute. Consider that as you lie there. Something like 100,000 kilometers of vessels, most of them capillaries thinner than a hair, and the whole volume of you passing through them again and again, without instruction, 60 times an hour, whether you are running or dreaming. It is the busiest thing about you and the one you notice least. Bleeding stops in stages, and the first stage is a squeeze. Within seconds of a vessel being cut, the smooth muscle in its wall contracts, narrowing the opening and slowing the flow. This is called vascular spasm, and it is triggered partly by direct injury to the muscle and partly by chemical signals released from damaged cells and from the platelets that arrive almost immediately. In a small vessel, this constriction alone can reduce blood loss dramatically. It buys time, which is the whole point. Everything else that happens in clotting is slower and needs those seconds. Think of a hose with a tear in it, and the rubber around the tear tightening on its own before anyone can reach the tap. There is no decision involved and no central command. The vessel responds locally, immediately, using information that exists only at the site of the injury. Your body is not run from one place. It is a federation of tissues, each of which knows how to act alone when it must. Platelets are not whole cells. They are fragments of a much larger cell that shattered on purpose. In your bone marrow live enormous cells called megakaryocytes, among the largest cells in the body, with vast lobed nuclei. Their entire function is to extend long protrusions into the blood vessels of the marrow and let the bloodstream tear them into pieces. Each megakaryocyte produces thousands of platelets this way. The fragments have no nucleus and cannot divide, and they survive in circulation for only about 8 to 10 days before being cleared. You carry between 150 and 400 billion of them per liter of blood. They are, in effect, disposable tools, manufactured continuously by a cell that sacrifices its own edges to make them. That is a strange and rather beautiful arrangement. Something in your marrow is quietly breaking itself apart, all day and all night, so that you will have what you need in the 4 seconds after you cut your finger. Von Willebrand factor is the glue that lets platelets hold on in a current. When a vessel wall is damaged, the collagen beneath the smooth inner lining becomes exposed. Platelets need to stick to that collagen, but blood in an artery moves fast, and the shear forces are enormous. A platelet trying to grab a wall in that flow is like a person trying to catch a rail from a moving train. Von Willebrand factor solves this. It is a huge multimeric protein that unfurls under high shear, stretching from a compact ball into a long strand and exposing binding sites that were hidden while it was folded. The faster the blood is moving, the more it opens. It binds to the exposed collagen at one end and to platelet receptors at the other, tethering them long enough for firmer bonds to form. What makes this so remarkable is that the protein uses the very force that would tear the platelets away as the trigger for holding them on. The problem is the mechanism of its own solution. Platelets change shape the moment they arrive. A resting platelet is a smooth disc, unremarkable, drifting along the edge of the flow. On activation, it transforms within seconds. Its internal skeleton of actin filaments reorganizes, and it throws out long spiky projections called filopodia, becoming something like a tiny sea urchin. Its surface receptors change their shape and their affinity. It empties internal granules loaded with chemical signals, including serotonin, calcium, and more von Willebrand factor, which recruit and activate other platelets nearby. Each activated platelet becomes a beacon calling in the next. A plug builds within a minute or two. Picture something the size of 2 microns unfolding into a grasping star, and then shouting chemically into the current for reinforcements. There is no thought in it and no intent. Yet the behavior is so purposeful in appearance that it is almost impossible to describe without using the language of will. Life is full of things that act as though they mean it. Coagulation is a cascade, a chain of enzymes waking one another in sequence. The clotting factors circulate constantly in inactive form, harmless, waiting. When one is activated, it activates the next, and at each step the signal multiplies. A single activated molecule at the top of the chain can generate thousands at the bottom. This is amplification, the same principle as a rumor or a chain reaction, and it is why a response that begins with a few damaged cells can produce a solid clot in under a minute. There are 2 entry points into the cascade, traditionally called the intrinsic and extrinsic pathways, which converge on a common final path. The modern understanding is messier and or interwoven than those neat diagrams suggest, but the essential logic holds. Small cause, enormous effect, delivered fast. The danger is obvious. A system built to amplify must also be built to stop, And most of the complexity of clotting is not in the switching on, but in the elaborate machinery that keeps it from switching on everywhere at once. Thrombin is the switch that turns liquid into solid. It sits at the center of the whole system. Thrombin circulates as prothrombin, an inert precursor, until the cascade cleaves it into its active form. Once active, it does many things at once. It converts fibrinogen into fibrin. It activates platelets. It activates other clotting factors upstream of itself, creating a positive feedback loop that accelerates its own production. It also, remarkably, participates in shutting the process down, binding to a protein called thrombomodulin on healthy vessel walls, and switching to an anticoagulant role. The same molecule builds the clot in the wound and forbids it in the intact vessel a millimeter away. Its behavior depends entirely on what surface it happens to be sitting on. It is a reminder that in biology, identity is often less about what a thing is than about where it finds itself. Fibrin is a web the body weaves inside itself. This is the heart of the whole story. Fibrinogen is one of the most abundant proteins in plasma, a long soluble molecule drifting harmlessly in the flow. Thrombin snips small fragments off it, and the moment those fragments are gone, the remaining molecules become sticky at their ends and begin assembling themselves, spontaneously, end to end and side to side, into long fibers. Those fibers branch and cross and tangle into a three-dimensional net, and the net traps red cells and platelets in its spaces until the whole mass becomes a solid gel. This is a clot. It is, quite literally, a web spun inside a wound. So when an ancient healer pressed spider silk into a cut, they were laying a foreign web on top of the place where a native web was already being spun. Two meshes, one made by an animal outside the body and one made by chemistry inside it, doing the same job in the same place at the same moment. That symmetry is not a metaphor. It is the actual architecture of the thing. Factor XIII stitches the fibrin web to itself. A fresh fibrin mesh is held together only by weak physical associations, and on its own it would be fragile, easily washed away by the pressure of returning blood. Factor XIII, activated by thrombin, is a transglutaminase, an enzyme that forms permanent covalent bonds between adjacent fibrin strands. It welds the crossing points. The clot changes from something that is merely tangled to something that is genuinely one connected object, far more resistant to mechanical force and to the enzymes that will eventually dissolve it. People born with factor XIII deficiency form clots normally at first and then bleed again hours later, as the unsecured mesh gives way. The failure is delayed, which made the condition difficult to understand for a long time. It is a quiet lesson in engineering. It is not enough to build the structure. Something must go around afterwards and fix every joint, or the whole thing comes apart the moment it is asked to hold. One clotting factor activates simply by touching the wrong kind of surface. Factor XII, sometimes called Hageman factor, has an unusual property. It does not wait for a chemical signal. It changes shape and becomes active on contact with almost any negatively charged surface it does not recognize as self. Glass will do it. Kaolin clay will do it. Certain minerals, certain synthetic polymers, collagen, and long chains of sugars will do it. This is called contact activation, and it is the reason a blood sample drawn into a plain glass tube will clot without anything being added. Here, finally, is the beginning of a real answer to the question we started with. A spider's web is an enormous surface area of foreign fiber pressed directly against flowing blood. It is not chemically inert to the body's sensors. It is precisely the sort of alien, textured, charged material that this ancient tripwire evolved to detect. The healers were not imagining the effect. They were triggering a mechanism that had been waiting in the blood for hundreds of millions of years, without any idea that it existed. A fine mesh works partly because of geometry, not chemistry. Take any material and divide it into finer and finer threads, and the surface area rises enormously while the mass stays the same. A single gram of spider silk drawn into fibers a few microns thick presents a startling amount of surface for its weight. When blood meets that surface, several things happen at once. Platelets have more edges to catch on. Clotting proteins have more places to adsorb and concentrate. The flow slows as it moves through the tangle, and slow blood clots faster than fast blood, and the mesh itself physically holds the forming clot in place against the pressure pushing outward. Ordinary cotton gauze does the same thing, less elegantly. Modern hemostatic dressings do it deliberately, engineered for exactly this. The lesson is that a wound dressing does not need to be a drug. It can simply be a shape. Sometimes the most powerful thing a material can do is offer the body a surface it knows how to use. Calcium is not only for bones. It is a clotting factor in its own right. In the old numbering system, calcium is factor IV. Several steps in the coagulation cascade cannot proceed without it, because it acts as a bridge binding negatively charged phospholipids on the surface of activated platelets to specific regions on the clotting proteins, holding them in position long enough for the reaction to occur. Remove the calcium and the entire cascade stops. This is exactly how blood samples are kept liquid for testing. The tubes contain citrate or EDTA, compounds that grab calcium ions and lock them away, and the blood inside simply cannot clot until calcium is added back. It is an odd thought that the mineral you associate with skeletons and milk is also the thing standing between you and permanent hemorrhage. The body does not maintain separate departments. The same few elements are used for everything, over and over, in different arrangements. Vitamin K is the quiet requirement behind several clotting proteins. 4 of the clotting factors, along with 2 of the body's natural anticoagulants, require a chemical modification after they are built. An enzyme adds an extra carboxyl group to certain glutamate residues, and this modification is what allows those proteins to bind calcium and therefore to work at all. The enzyme cannot function without vitamin K without it. The liver produces clotting factors that look correct and are functionally useless. Newborn infants are given vitamin K at birth for exactly this reason, because they are born with very little of it, and their gut bacteria have not yet begun to produce any. The letter K comes from the German word coagulation, assigned by the Danish scientist Henrik Dam, who discovered it in the 1930s while studying chickens fed on a fat-free diet. Some of the most important discoveries in medicine begin with someone noticing that an animal is bleeding for no apparent reason and refusing to let the question go. Warfarin, one of the most widely used medicines in the world, began as a cattle disease. In the 1920s, farmers in the northern plains of North America began losing cattle to uncontrollable bleeding after minor procedures. The cause was traced to spoiled sweet clover hay. A fungus growing in the damp hay was converting a harmless plant compound into dicamerol, which interferes with the recycling of vitamin K and therefore disables the clotting factors that depend on it. A biochemist named Carl Paul Link worked out the chemistry, and the resulting compound was patented, initially as a rat poison, and later, after a failed suicide attempt was treated successfully with vitamin K and demonstrated the drug's reversibility, developed into a human medicine. Millions of people now take it to prevent strokes. Picture a farmer standing in a barn in Wisconsin in February with a dead heifer and a wagon of moldy hay, at the beginning of a chain that ends in a small white tablet on a bedside table a century later. Medicine does not always advance from the laboratory outward. Sometimes it walks in from a field. Hemophilia shows what happens when one link in the chain is missing. In hemophilia A, the missing protein is factor VIII. In hemophilia B, it is factor IX. Everything else works. The vessels constrict, the platelets arrive and stick and form a plug, but the cascade cannot amplify properly, and the fibrin mesh that should reinforce that plug never forms adequately. The result is not usually dramatic external bleeding, but slow, deep, internal bleeding, particularly into joints, where repeated episodes destroy the cartilage over years. Both forms are carried on the X chromosome, which is why they appear overwhelmingly in males. The condition ran through the royal houses of Europe from Queen Victoria's descendants into Spain, Prussia, and Russia, where the illness of the Tsarevich-elects helped bring Rasputin into the imperial household, and through that, into the events that ended a dynasty. A single missing protein, a few thousand atoms arranged wrongly, and the shape of a century bends around it. Von Willebrand disease is the most common inherited bleeding disorder, and most people who have it do not know. It affects roughly 1% of the population, though only a fraction ever have symptoms severe enough to be diagnosed. The defect is in the quantity or the quality of von Willebrand factor, the tethering protein that holds platelets to a damaged wall under high flow. Because it is not carried on a sex chromosome, it appears in men and women equal. And it often presents mildly, as easy bruising, frequent nosebleeds, heavy menstrual bleeding, or unexpected oozing after dental work. Many people live an entire lifetime assuming they simply bruise easily. There is a particular kind of hidden condition that hides not by being rare, but by resembling something ordinary. It is a reminder that the boundary between normal variation and disease is not drawn by nature. It is drawn by us, somewhere along a continuous gradient, wherever it seems most useful to draw it. A clot does not simply sit there. It contracts and pulls the wound closed. Once the fibrin mesh has formed and platelets are bound throughout it, those platelets begin to pull. Their internal actin and myosin filaments, the same proteins that contract in your muscles, generate tension on the fibrin strands they are attached to. The whole clot shrinks, squeezing out serum and drawing the edges of the wound toward one another. A clot can reduce to a fraction of its original volume this way, becoming denser, stronger, and smaller, while the tissue on either side is pulled gently inward. Something the size of a full stop is quietly performing a suture. Consider that the same molecular machinery that lets you lift your arm is also, at a scale you cannot see, closing a cut on the back of your hand while you sleep. Nature is deeply unoriginal in the best possible way. It finds a solution and then uses it everywhere. The body dissolves its own clots on a schedule. A clot is temporary scaffolding, and leaving it in place would eventually block the vessel it was meant to protect. Woven into the fibrin mesh as it forms is an inactive protein called plasminogen. As the wound heals, the cells lining the vessel release tissue plasminogen activator, which converts plasminogen into plasmin, an enzyme that cuts fibrin apart. The clot is digested from within by a demolition crew that was built into its walls at the time of construction. The timing is controlled by inhibitors that hold plasmin in check until the tissue underneath is ready. When this system fails in one direction, clots persist and block arteries. When it fails in the other, wounds reopen. Synthetic tissue plasminogen activator is now given intravenously in the first hours of certain strokes to dissolve a clot in the brain before the tissue beyond it dies. Every structure your body builds contains, from the first moment, the instructions for its own removal. A scab is a clot that has met the air. When a clot forms at the surface of the skin rather than inside a vessel, the outer layer dries. Water evaporates, the fibrin mesh collapses and hardens, and the trapped red cells oxidize and darken. What remains is a rigid crust bonded to the wound edges. Underneath it, in the moist space it protects, the real work continues undisturbed. Epithelial cells at the wound margin begin to divide and to crawl inward beneath the scab, sliding across the surface until they meet cells coming the other way and stop. Fibroblasts move in and begin laying down collagen. New capillaries sprout into the space. By the time the scab loosens and falls away, a thin new sheet of skin has already been finished beneath it. The thing you were tempted to pick at was a roof over a construction site. Healing does most of its work where it cannot be observed, which may be true of a great many kinds of repair. Direct pressure remains the most effective first response to bleeding ever devised. No dressing, ancient or modern, outperforms the simple act of pressing firmly on a wound and not letting go. Pressure works by collapsing the damaged vessel against itself, reducing flow to the point where the clotting cascade can win the race against the loss. Every advance in hemostatic technology is, in essence, a way of making pressure more effective or of holding it in place. This is why the spider web, the gauze pad, the moss, the clay, and the engineered polymer all work to some degree. They are all, at minimum, something to press with. There is a strange humility in the fact that the most reliable intervention in trauma care requires no equipment, no training beyond a sentence, and no chemistry at all. Sometimes the answer that has been available the entire time really is the best one, and everything since has been an improvement at the margins. The tourniquet was nearly abandoned by medicine, and then brought back. For much of the 20th century, tourniquets were regarded with deep suspicion. The teaching was that they caused limb loss, nerve damage, and harm out of proportion to their benefit, and civilian first aid courses discouraged them for decades. Military experience in the conflicts of the early 2000s overturned this almost completely. Data from combat casualty care showed that properly applied tourniquets saved a substantial number of lives from extremity hemorrhage, and that the feared complications were far rarer than believed, particularly when the device was armed. Immoved within a couple of hours, the lesson traveled back into civilian medicine, and tourniquets now sit in public bleeding control kits in schools and stadiums. A technique known to Roman surgeons was condemned, discarded, and then reinstated on the strength of evidence. Knowledge does not only move forward, sometimes it circles back to collect something it dropped. Before the ligature, the alternative to bleeding was fire. For centuries, the standard treatment for a severed vessel, particularly after amputation, was cauterization, either with a red-hot iron or with boiling oil poured into the wound. It worked, in the sense that it stopped the bleeding. It also destroyed tissue, caused agonizing pain, and produced burns that frequently became fatal infections. In the 1530s, a French army surgeon named Ambroise Paré ran out of oil during a campaign in Italy and improvised a dressing of egg yolk, rose oil, and turpentine instead. He lay awake that night expecting the untreated men to die. In the morning, he found them resting comfortably, while the men treated with boiling oil were feverish and in torment. He wrote afterward that he resolved never to burn wounded men so cruelly again. He went on to revive the ligature, tying off vessels with thread. It began with a shortage and a sleepless night. It is worth remembering that some of the kindest turns in medical history were made by someone who ran out of the standard treatment and was forced to notice. Sphagnum moss dressed the wounds of the First World War when cotton ran out. By 1915, the demand for surgical dressings had outrun the supply of cotton, which was also needed for explosives. Volunteers across Britain, Ireland, and North America were sent into bogs to gather sphagnum moss, which was cleaned, dried, and sewn into muslin bags. It was an extraordinary choice, and a good one. Sphagnum can absorb many times its own weight in fluid, considerably more than cotton, and it holds that fluid evenly rather than pooling. It is also naturally acidic and contains compounds that inhibit bacterial growth, which meant dressings stayed usable longer in conditions where nothing could be changed often. Millions of these dressings were produced. Picture schoolchildren and elderly women wading through peat bogs in Scotland in the rain, filling sacks, because the mud of a Belgian battlefield needed something to close over it. The plant had been used for wounds by peoples of the far north for centuries. The war simply rediscovered, at industrial scale, what somebody's grandmother had always known. Maggots clean wounds better than most instruments, and surgeons have known it for 200 years. Military doctors from the Napoleonic Wars onward reported that soldiers whose wounds had become infested with fly larvae in the field often did better than those whose wounds stayed clean of them. The larvae of certain species, particularly the green bottle fly, feed only on dead and necrotic tissue, leaving living tissue untouched. They secrete enzymes that break down dead material and antimicrobial compounds that reduce bacterial load, and their movement stimulates the wound bed. Sterile medical maggots, raised in laboratories from disinfected eggs, are an approved therapy today for wounds that will not heal, particularly diabetic foot ulcers and pressure sores. Patients understandably find the idea difficult. It works anyway. There is a recurring pattern in the history of healing, in which the thing that disgusts us and the thing that saves us turn out to be the same thing. And the only question is whether we can get past the first reaction long enough to notice. Ötzi the Iceman carried a fungus that may have been a medicine. The frozen body found in the Alps in 1991, dating to around 3300 BCE, was equipped with astonishing care. Among his possessions were 2 pieces of birch polypore fungus threaded onto leather strips. Birch polypore contains compounds with antibacterial and antiparasitic activity. An analysis of Ötzi's intestines revealed the eggs of whipworm, a parasite that causes abdominal pain and diarrhea. It is not possible to prove that he carried the fungus deliberately as treatment. It is difficult to think of a better explanation for why a man crossing a mountain range would carry 2 pieces of a specific bracket fungus, carefully mounted, when he was carrying almost nothing else that was not essential. 5,300 years ago, someone was walking through the snow with what appears to be a pharmacy on a string. The impulse to treat ourselves is older than agriculture, older than writing, older than the wheel. Some peoples closed wounds using the jaws of living ants. The technique is documented in parts of South America, Africa, and South Asia, and it is described in the ancient Indian surgical tradition associated with the Sushruta Samhita. A soldier ant, or a large-jawed species, is held to the wound and encouraged to bite. As its mandibles close, they pull the wound edges together. The body of the ant is then twisted off, and the head remains, its jaws locked in place by muscular rigor, holding the closure for days. A row of them along a cut is a line of tiny permanent clamps. The technique is effective for certain clean wounds and requires no thread, no needle, and no manufacture of any kind. Consider the observation that must have come first. Someone was bitten by an ant, noticed that the grip persisted after death, and made a leap from an irritation to a surgical instrument. Every tool in the world began as somebody looking at an ordinary thing and seeing a use in it that was not there before. The oldest known surgical sutures were sewn with linen thread more than 4,000 years ago. Egyptian mummies show wounds closed with stitches, and Egyptian texts describe the practice. Over the following millennia, surgeons used linen, flax, horsehair, cotton, tendon, leather strips, and gut. The material called catgut, which was never made from cats, came from the intestinal walls of sheep or cattle, cleaned, twisted, and dried. It had the useful property of being absorbed by the body over weeks, so it did not need removal. Silk from the silkworm entered surgical use early and never really left. What all these materials share is that they were repurposed. Nobody invented suture material. Someone looked at the thread already used to sew a garment and asked whether it might also sew a person. The distance between a needle in cloth and a needle in skin is smaller than it feels, and someone had to be the first to cross it. Silkworm silk has been used to close human wounds for well over 2,000 years. Bomix mari, the domesticated silk moth, produces a fiber of two proteins, fibrin at the core and a gum called sericin coating the outside. Braided silk suture was among the most widely used surgical threads of the 19th and 20th centuries and remains in use today, valued for how it handles in the hand and how securely it knots. Its reputation for provoking tissue reaction comes largely from the sericin coating, and modern surgical silk is degummed to remove it. This matters for our story because it establishes something important. The body tolerates the core protein of silk remarkably well. A fiber spun by an insect can sit inside human tissue for weeks without the immune system tearing it apart. That biological compatibility is not a small thing. It is the door through which everything modern about silk medicine has walked. The clotting system is at least 500 million years old. Versions of it appear across the vertebrates, and related systems exist in invertebrates that diverged from our lineage long before there were fish. The horseshoe crab, an animal essentially unchanged for hundreds of millions of years, has a coagulation system built on entirely different proteins that responds not to injury as such, but to bacterial endotoxin, sealing the wound and trapping the invader in one action. Its blue blood, colored by copper-based hemocyanin rather than iron, is harvested for a test that detects bacterial contamination in vaccines and injectable drugs with extraordinary sensitivity. Nearly every injection given to a human being on Earth has been checked using a substance derived from an animal older than the dinosaurs. When you cut yourself, the response that follows is not a recent adaptation. It is one of the oldest continuously running programs in the animal kingdom, inherited from ancestors who lived and bled in a sea that no longer exists. Not all animals bleed, and some of them clot in ways we have only recently understood. Insects have an open circulatory system, with a fluid called hemolymph that bathes the organs directly rather than traveling in closed vessels. When an insect is wounded, cells called hemocytes aggregate at the site and the hemolymph gels, sealing the breach, often within minutes. Some species produce a clot that hardens further through cross-linking driven by enzymes closely related to the ones that stabilize our own fibrin. The problem of a leak in a pressurized body has been solved independently many times in different chemistries by animals with no common solution to inherit. Convergence in evolution is a kind of argument. When many separate lineages arrive at the same answer, it suggests that the problem has a limited number of good solutions, and that reality itself is narrowing the options. The same thing was happening in its own way in all those separate human cultures reaching for the same gray thread. The ancient healers were partly right, and the part they were wrong about was the important one. The spider web genuinely provides a fine, foreign, high-surface area mesh that accelerates contact activation and gives a forming clot a scaffold to hold. That part is real, but it was almost always applied without any thought for what else the web was carrying, and the web is by Daisy. GN, a trap for airborne debris, dust, fungal spores, bacteria from the soil below it, insect fragments, a remedy that helps in the first minute and kills in the second week is not a good remedy. And there is no way for a healer working before the germ theory of disease to see the connection between the two, separated as they are by days of apparent recovery. This is the hardest thing about medicine before evidence. The benefit is visible and immediate. The harm is invisible and late. The mind gives full weight to the first and almost none to the second, and it takes an entire scientific method, built over centuries, to correct for that single bias in a single human brain. Cobweb remedies were still being recorded by doctors within living memory of the antibiotic era. Folk medicine surveys conducted across rural Europe and North America in the 20th century continued to find cobwebs listed among the treatments people actually used for cuts, alongside chewed tobacco, flour, soot, puffball spores, and cold tea. These were not survivals from an unimaginable past. They were remedies used by people whose grandchildren are alive now. What ended most of them was not a scientific argument reaching the countryside, but the arrival of things that plainly worked better and were cheap and easy to buy. Practice changes less often through persuasion than through replacement. When something simply better appears on the shelf of the village shop, the old thing quietly stops being used, and within 2 generations, stops being remembered. Most of what humanity has ever known has been lost exactly this way. Not refuted, just no longer needed, set down gently and never picked up again. Puffball spores were pressed into wounds for the same reason, and they may have worked for the same reason. The mature fruiting body of certain puffball fungi releases an enormous cloud of fine, dry spores, and across Europe and North America, these were packed into bleeding wounds, and even into the nostrils for nosebleeds. Some traditions use the papery inner flesh of the fungus as a dressing directly. Here again is the pattern. A vast surface area of dry, fine, foreign particles pressed against blood, absorbing fluid, concentrating clotting proteins, and giving a forming clot something to build around. Modern hemostatic powders operate on almost exactly this principle, using engineered particles instead of spores. There is a particular pleasure in discovering that a remedy which sounds like superstition turns out to be crude engineering. The healers were not wrong about the effect. They simply attributed it to the fungus when it belonged to the shape. The question of why the spider's web works has more than one correct answer. It is tempting to look for a single mechanism, one clean explanation that settles everything. Real biological effects rarely arrange themselves so neatly. A web pressed into a wound provides mechanical pressure. It provides an enormous foreign surface for contact activation. It provides a physical scaffold that anchors the clot against the flow. It absorbs fluid and concentrates the proteins left behind. And silk itself, as we will see, carries properties that go further than any of this. Several small effects, none of them decisive alone, stacking into something a person could notice from across a room. Most of the world works this way, in accumulations rather than in single causes. We tell ourselves stories with one reason in them because one reason is easier to hold, and then reality patiently sets out four. A spider is not an insect, and the difference goes deeper than the count of its legs. Insects have 6 legs, 3 body segments, and usually wings and antennae. Spiders have 8 legs, 2 body regions joined by a narrow waist, no wings and no antennae at all. They belong to the arachnids, alongside scorpions, mites, and ticks, and the lineages separated so long ago that a spider is no more closely related to a fly than you are to a shark. Spiders navigate by touch and vibration rather than by the antennal chemistry insects rely on, and they have simple eyes rather than the compound eyes of a bee. Most possess 8 of them, arranged in patterns so consistent within families that arachnologists identify species by the geometry of the eye rows alone. The animal that has been quietly sharing your house since you moved in is not a small version of anything familiar. It is a member of a separate and ancient branch of animal life, running on a different design, and it has been running that design successfully for a very long time. There are more than 50,000 described species of spider, and almost all of them make silk. New species are named at a rate of several hundred a year, and the real total is certainly far higher than the catalog. They live on every continent except Antarctica, from tidal zones to the slopes of the Himalayas, in deserts, caves, forests, and inside the walls of your home. Not all of them build webs. Wolf spiders hunt on foot. Jumping spiders stalk and pounce. Crab spiders sit motionless in flowers and wait, some of them slowly changing color over days to match the petals they are hiding in. But nearly every spider spins silk for something, whether a web, a drag line, an egg case, a burrow lining, a mating platform, or a shroud for its prey. Silk is not one behavior among many for this group of animals. It is the thing they are, expressed in 50,000 variations, and the web is only the most visible of them. Spider silk is a protein, and its sequence is mostly two of the simplest amino acids there are. The proteins are called spidroins, and their internal structure is astonishingly repetitive. Long stretches consist of glycine and alanine, the two smallest amino acids in the biological alphabet, repeated in blocks over and over for hundreds of residues. Glycine has a side chain of a single hydrogen atom. Alanine's is barely larger. From these two nearly featureless building blocks, arranged in the right order, the animal produces a material that outperforms most things human industry can manufacture. There is a lesson buried in that. Complexity in nature does not usually come from exotic ingredients. It comes from ordinary ingredients arranged with extraordinary precision. The spider is not using rare chemistry. It is using the cheapest components available and the most careful possible sequence. And the difference between silk and slime is nothing but the order of the letters. The strength of silk comes from crystals smaller than a wavelength of light. Within the fiber, the alanine-rich stretches of the protein fold into flat, stacked sheets known as beta sheets, and these lock together through hydrogen bonding into rigid nanocrystals only a few nanometers across. Individually, hydrogen bonds are weak, easily broken by heat or by water. Arranged in these tight stacks, in such numbers and such precise geometry, they behave collectively as something extremely strong, because a force applied to the crystal must break many bonds at once rather than one after another. This is a general principle in materials, and the spider exploits it perfectly. Picture a rope made of 1,000 threads, none of which could hold a coin, which together will hold a car. The strength was never in any of the parts. It was in how completely they agreed to act at the same moment. Between the crystals lies a disordered region, and that is where the stretch comes from. If silk were made only of the rigid nanocrystals, it would be strong and brittle, like glass, snapping cleanly under a sudden load. But the glycine-rich stretches between the crystalline blocks form a tangled, semi-amorphous matrix, more like a rubber. Under tension, these regions uncoil and extend, absorbing energy before the load ever reaches the crystals. The result is a composite of hard elements suspended in a soft one, and the combination gives silk something rarer than strength. It gives it toughness, the ability to absorb energy before breaking. Most engineering materials force a trade. Make a thing stronger and you usually make it more brittle. Silk refuses the trade because it is not one material at all but two, interleaved at the scale of nanometers. That is not simplicity. It is a composite structure of the kind human engineers only learned to design deliberately in the last century. Dragline silk absorbs more energy before breaking than Kevlar. This is the figure that gets quoted most, and it is worth being precise about what it means. Silk is not stronger than steel in the sense of bearing more force, though weight for weight the comparison is closer than it sounds. What silk genuinely exceeds is toughness, the total energy absorbed per unit volume before failure, where good dragline silk outperforms high-grade steel by a wide margin and beats Kevlar as well. This is exactly the property you want in something meant to catch a flying insect. A bumblebee arriving at speed carries a great deal of kinetic energy, and a web that were merely strong would either break or fling the insect back out. The web must catch, absorb, and hold. It is worth pausing on the fact that the most impressive property of this material is not its resistance to force, but its willingness to yield in exactly the right way. There are situations in which giving is stronger than holding, and evolution found that out long before we did. Inside the spider, silk is not a thread, it is a liquid. In the silk gland, the spidrine proteins are stored at extraordinary concentration, up to 50% by weight, in a solution that should by every ordinary expectation clog and solidify. It does not, because the proteins are held in a specific folded configuration with their sticky regions tucked away, and because they arrange themselves into a liquid crystalline phase that flows more easily as it is sheared. The spider carries around a reservoir of concentrated P, protein that would set solid if handled wrongly and never does. The engineering problem this solves is severe. Any human attempt to store protein at that density produces a useless gel within hours. The spider does it continuously for its entire life, in a gland the size of a grain of rice, with no maintenance and no failures. We have not matched it. The thread is made in a duct a few millimeters long, and everything happens on the way out. As the liquid silk travels down the narrowing spinning duct, it passes through a sequence of precisely staged changes. Water is drawn out through the duct walls. Sodium and chloride ions are removed and replaced with potassium and phosphate. The acidity rises sharply, the pH dropping from around 7 to closer to 5. And the geometry of the duct itself imposes shear and elongational flow on the fluid as it accelerates. Each of these changes nudges the proteins to unfold from their stored configuration and align, and their exposed regions begin locking into beta sheets. By the time the material reaches the spinneret, it is no longer a liquid. This is a manufacturing process happening at body temperature, in water, with no heat and no solvents and no pressure vessel, in a tube shorter than your fingernail. Human fiber production, by comparison, generally involves high temperatures or organic solvents and produces something inferior. Nature has been running the better factory for 400 million years, in silence, on a diet of flies. The spider does not push the silk out, it pulls it. This detail is easy to overlook, and it is central to how the material works. The The spinning duct does not extrude fiber under pressure the way a machine forces plastic through a die. The spider attaches the beginning of the thread to a surface, or holds it with a leg and draws it out, and the pulling itself provides the elongational force that aligns the proteins and completes the transformation from liquid to solid. The rate of pulling changes the properties of the resulting fiber. Draw faster and the thread is stiffer and stronger. Draw slower and it is more extensible. A spider can therefore tune the material to the job in the act of making it, adjusting the recipe in real time by nothing more than the speed of its own leg. Consider a craftsman whose only tool for controlling the quality of the thread is how quickly they walk backwards. It is a form of control so simple that it took materials scientists a long time to believe it was the whole answer. A single spider may have 7 different silk glands, each producing a different material. An orb weaver is not a maker of silk. It is a maker of silks, plural, each with its own gene family, its own gland, its own spigot on the spinnerets, and its own mechanical character. There is the strong dragline, the stretchy capture spiral, the sticky glue, the fine wrapping silk used to bind prey, the cement used to attach lines to surfaces, and the tough silk of the egg case. The animal selects among them continuously as it builds and can combine them, laying glue onto a core thread as it is spun. Imagine a weaver with 7 looms running at once, each threaded with a different fiber, working in the dark, finishing a structure larger than their own body in under an hour. Then imagine that they have never seen another weaver do it, and were never shown. Dragline silk is the spider's lifeline, and it is always attached to something. As a spider moves, it lays down a continuous line of major ampullate silk behind it, anchored at intervals with small attachment discs. If it falls or is knocked from a surface, the line arrests the fall. If it is threatened, it can drop deliberately and hang, then climb back. The same silk forms the radial spokes in the frame of the orb web, the parts that must bear load without stretching much. It is the strongest of the spider's silks and the most studied. There is something quietly affecting in the image of an animal that never moves anywhere without first securing a way back. It does not trust the surface it is walking on. It trusts the thread it made itself, and it makes that thread continuously, without pause, for its whole life. The spiral that actually catches the insect is a different silk entirely, and it can stretch to several times its length. Flagelliform silk, which forms the capture spiral of an orb web, is far more extensible than dragline. It can extend to 2 or 3 times its original length before failing, and it does so while absorbing enormous energy. Onto this stretchy core, the spider lays droplets of aqueous glue from the aggregate glands, which bead up along the thread like dew on a fence wire. The combination is deliberate. The elastic thread absorbs the impact of the insect and slows it without snapping, while the glue holds it once it has stopped. 2 materials with 2 jobs, spun together in a single pass. The web is not a net. It is a shock absorber with adhesive attached, and the distinction is the difference between catching a bee and being destroyed by one. Some spiders make dry glue out of nanofibres and static. Not all sticky silk uses droplets. A large group of spiders, the cribolates, possess a specialized plate called the cribellum covered in thousands of tiny spigots, and a comb of stiff bristles on the fourth leg called the calamistrum. The spider draws the comb rapidly across the plate, teasing out an extraordinarily fine wool of nanofibers, some of them only 10 to 30 nanometers thick, and puffing this into a fluffy band around a core thread. The result adheres to insects without any glue at all, through van der Waals forces and mechanical entanglement with the insect's own hairs and cuticle. This is dry adhesion, the same family of physics that lets a gecko walk on glass. Two entirely different solutions to the problem of holding a struggling insect, arrived at within the same order of animals. Evolution does not find the answer. It finds an answer, and then it finds another one somewhere else. The silk that wraps prey is spun in a sheet from hundreds of spigots at once. Aciniform silk comes from a large field of small spigots on the posterior spinnerets, and rather than producing a single thread, the spider fans them into a broad ribbon and swathes its prey while rotating it with the legs. This silk is tougher than dragline in some measures, though weaker, because it is designed to absorb the struggling of something that does not want to be held. A wrapped fly disappears into a white parcel in a few seconds. There is a version of this you have almost certainly witnessed without watching closely. An animal turning a struggling body in its legs while a shroud appears around it from nowhere. It is unsettling, and it is also, mechanically, one of the most efficient packaging operations in the natural world. Attachment discs are made of a silk that behaves like glue and dries into a rivet. Piriform silk is spun as fine fibers embedded in a liquid cement, applied directly to a surface in a rapid zigzag as the spider presses its spinnerets down. The cement wets the surface, penetrates its microscopic roughness, and solidifies, bonding the dragline to stone, bark, glass, or ceiling paint. Each disc is a composite anchor, a bundle of fibers set in a hardened matrix, spread wide to distribute load. Adhesive engineers study these intently because bonding reliably to unknown, dirty, damp, arbitrary surfaces remains a genuinely difficult problem for human materials. The spider solves it in under a second, thousands of times a week, in the rain on anything. It has no data sheet and does not need one. Egg sac silk is a different material again, built to last through a winter. Tubuliform silk, produced only by mature females and only during egg laying, has a distinct amino acid composition, higher in serine and lower in glycine than the other silks, and it makes a stiff, dense, weather-resistant fabric. The egg sac must survive months of rain, freezing, ultraviolet light, and the attention of parasitic wasps, protecting a clutch that in some species numbers in the thousands. Many females never see the eggs hatch. Some species die still holding the sac, a material evolved for one purpose, used once, by an animal that will not be present for the outcome, and made to a standard that outlasts its maker by a season. There is a kind of care in nature that has nothing to do with feeling and is difficult to look at without borrowing the word anyway. Spider silk shrinks violently when it gets wet. Expose dragline silk to high humidity, and it will contract to as little as half its original length while swelling in width, a phenomenon called supercontraction. Water molecules penetrate the disordered regions between the crystals and disrupt the hydrogen bonds holding those chains in their extended, aligned state, allowing them to coil back. The effect generates real force, enough that supercontracting silk has been proposed as a biological actuator, a muscle made of thread. For the spider, it is probably a maintenance system. A web left overnight goes slack as threads sag and stretch, and morning dew tightens it again, pulling the structure back into tension. Consider a machine that repairs itself with weather. The thing that would ruin most structures is the thing this one is waiting for. The toughest silk yet measured comes from a spider that builds its web across rivers. Carostris darwini, Darwin's bark spider, was described from Madagascar in 2009. It suspends orb webs up to 2.5 square meters in area over open water, anchored by bridging lines that have been measured at more than 25 meters. How the spider crosses that distance is remarkable in itself. It releases a long strand into the wind from one bank and waits for it to snag on the other side, then walks across and reinforces it. Its dragline silk is roughly twice as tough as any other spider silk tested, and around 10 times tougher than Kevlar. The animal that makes it is a few centimeters across. It hangs a net the size of a door above a river, using a bridge it threw blindly into the air. And it does this because the insects it wants are the ones flying above the water where no other web can reach. Every extreme material in nature exists because something needed to do something impossible. The golden orb weavers spin thread that is genuinely gold. Species in the genus Trichonephylla, formerly grouped under Nephila, produce silk with a distinct yellow color, thought to serve a dual purpose. In sunlight, it may camouflage against yellow foliage or even attract bees that respond to yellow, and in shade it disappears against dark backgrounds. In the early 2000s, a project in Madagascar collected silk from more than 1 million wild golden orb weavers, harvested by hand by teams of workers who caught the spiders, drew silk from them, and released them over 8 years. The result was a single shimmering brocade cloth and a cape, made entirely of natural spider silk, now among the rarest textiles on Earth. There is no farming of spiders at scale, because they are territorial and cannibalistic and will not tolerate crowding. To make one shawl, 1 million spiders had to be visited individually and let go. Many spiders eat their own webs each night and rebuild before dawn. Silk is expensive. It is protein, and protein is the most metabolically costly thing an animal can make. Rather than abandon a damaged web, many orb weavers consume it, taking the silk back in through the mouthparts and digesting the proteins for reuse. Radioactive labeling studies have shown that amino acids from an eaten web can reappear in new silk within half an hour. The animal is recycling its own architecture on a daily cycle, with an efficiency no human material process approaches. Think of a builder who demolishes the house each evening, swallows it, and constructs the next one from the same atoms by morning. Nothing is wasted, because in a world where every molecule was purchased with the risk of hunting, there is no such thing as spare. Silk conducts heat better than most metals, and better when it is stretched. Measurements published in 2012 found the thermal conductivity of dragline silk from the golden orb weaver to be far higher than that of most organic materials, exceeding silicon and approaching some metals. Stranger still, stretching the fiber increased its conductivity, whereas nearly all known materials conduct heat less well when strained. The explanation appears to lie in the ordered protein chains providing efficient pathways for vibrational energy, pathways that straighten and improve as the fiber is drawn. Nobody expected this. It was not what anyone was looking for. That is worth sitting with for a moment. A material studied intensely for a century, examined by thousands of researchers for its mechanical properties, was still quietly holding a completely unrelated record that no one thought to check. Silk breaks down in the body, and the rate can be adjusted. Silk fibrin is degraded by ordinary proteolytic enzymes, the same class that dismantle any protein, and the fragments are absorbed and reused. This is why silk sutures do not need to be surgically retrieved from deep tissue in the way that some synthetic materials do, and it is central to why silk has become so interesting in regenerative medicine. A scaffold that dissolves is not a defect. It is the entire design intention. You want a structure that supports the growing tissue and then leaves, at roughly the pace the tissue takes to establish itself, without a second operation and without a permanent foreign object. The rate of degradation can be tuned by processing, by how much beta sheet crystallinity is induced during manufacture. A material that vanishes on a schedule you set is a strange thing to want, and it turns out to be one of the most valuable properties a medical material can have. The immune system tolerates silk to a degree that surprises people who work with materials. Most foreign objects placed in living tissue provoke a foreign body response, a cascade of inflammation, macrophage attack, and eventual encapsulation in fibrous scar. Properly purified silk fibrin, with the sericin coating removed, provokes far less than expected. Cells will attach to it and grow across it. It does not release toxic breakdown products, and its degradation fragments are simply amino acids. This tolerance is the quiet foundation under everything else. A material can have magnificent mechanical properties and be entirely useless in medicine if the body will not accept it. And most materials with silk strength are exactly that. Compatibility is not a glamorous property. It is the one that determines whether anything else about a material ever matters. Spider silk has mild antimicrobial properties, but they are more modest than the folklore suggests. Studies have and that silk and web material can inhibit the growth of certain bacteria under laboratory conditions, and various explanations have been proposed, including the presence of pyrrolidine, which is hygroscopic and may create a locally dry environment, and potassium hydrogen phosphate, which lowers surface pH. Some work suggests the effects are inconsistent and depend heavily on the species, on how the silk was collected, and on the organism tested. The honest summary is that there is something there, and it is not nothing, and it is also not a reliable antiseptic. This is what real evidence usually looks like from the inside. Not a clean confirmation or a clean refutation, but a modest effect, poorly characterized, arguing with itself across a dozen papers. The tidy stories arrive later if they arrive at all. The claim that spider webs contain vitamin K is repeated everywhere and supported by almost nothing. It appears in articles, in videos, in survival guides, and in a great many confident explanations of the ancient practice. It has no good source behind it. Vitamin K is fat-soluble and is required inside the liver during the manufacture of clotting factors, not at the surface of a wound where those factors are already circulating in finished form. Even if silk contained it, applying it topically to a cut would do essentially nothing to the speed of clotting, because that is not where or how the vitamin acts. The real mechanisms, the mesh, the surface, the pressure, the contact activation, are more interesting than the myth, and they are actually true. There is a particular kind of falsehood that survives because it sounds like an explanation. It gives the mind the sensation of understanding, and once that sensation arrives, curiosity switches off. That is the real damage a small myth does. Not that it is wrong, but that it stops the question. A web can reach out and pull an insect toward it before contact. Flying insects accumulate a positive electrostatic charge as they move through the air, from the friction of their wings beating hundreds of times a second. Spider silk, meanwhile, tends to carry a slight negative charge. Researchers have filmed webs visibly deforming toward approaching charged insects, the threads bending upward through the air in the instant before impact. The effect is small, measured in millimeters, and it is enough to increase the effective capture area of the web and to grab an insect that would otherwise have passed just beyond the edge. Imagine standing in a doorway and watching the curtains lean toward you as you approach. The web is not simply waiting. It is reaching, very slightly, using a force with no sound and no visible cause, at the last possible moment. Spiders fly, and they may be using the electric field of the planet to do it. The behavior is called ballooning. A spider climbs to a high point, raises its abdomen, and releases several fine strands of silk into the air, and then lets go. Small spiders and spiderlings have been carried in this way for hundreds of kilometers and to altitudes of several kilometers. It was long assumed that wind alone explained it, but experiments have shown that spiders will take off in still air within an electric field, that they can detect such fields through the fine sensory hairs on their legs, and that they will raise their abdomens and prepare to launch when a field is switched on. The Earth maintains a permanent atmospheric potential gradient between the ground and the ionosphere, and it appears that some spiders are reading it. An animal without wings, without eyes worth much, uses a planetary electrical property to decide when to leave the ground. There is a layer of the sky made of drifting animals, and much of it is spiders. Aerial plankton is the term for the enormous population of tiny organisms that live suspended in the atmosphere at any moment, carried by wind and thermals. Surveys using aircraft and nets have found spiders at 3 or 4 kilometers of altitude, cold and motionless, but alive. Estimates suggest that the number of ballooning spiders crossing a single square kilometer in a year runs into the millions. When a new volcanic island rises from the sea and cools, spiders are typically among the first animals to arrive, landing on bare rock long before there is anything to eat, surviving briefly on the other wind-blown creatures that arrive with them. Above your roof tonight, at an altitude where the air is thin and freezing, there are animals in transit who did not choose the destination. The colonization of the world was not always an expedition. Sometimes it was a fall that took a long time to land. Darwin found spiders landing on the Beagle 60 miles from shore. In his account of the voyage, he describes the rigging of the ship becoming covered with fine threads and small red spiders on a day when the vessel was far out at sea, the animals arriving from nowhere on a light breeze. He watched one climb, raise its abdomen, emit threads and lift away again, and he noted, with the puzzled precision that characterizes everything he wrote, that the spider was clearly doing this on purpose. He had no explanation. He simply recorded it carefully and left the question open, which is a discipline more difficult than it sounds. Some of the most valuable sentences in the history of science are the ones in which somebody wrote down exactly what they saw and admitted they could not account for it. It took nearly 2 centuries for anyone to work out what those spiders were reading in the air. Silk is older than trees. The oldest known silk-producing structures in the fossil record belong to arachnids from the Devonian period, more than 380 million years ago, predating the first forests. Orb webs themselves are younger, though still ancient, and pieces of web preserved in amber from the Cretaceous, roughly 100 million years old, show recognizable spiral geometry, complete with glue droplets, and in one specimen, the remains of insects still caught in the threads. That fragment is a moment of predation frozen mid-event, sealed in resin while dinosaurs were alive, and it is still there, still sticky-looking, still describing a struggle that ended in an afternoon nobody recorded. Almost nothing survives from a single day 100 million years ago. A spider's morning's work did. No spider is ever taught to build a web. A spiderling that has never seen another spider, hatched in isolation, will construct a species-typical orb web on its first attempt. The sequence is long and involves dozens of distinct behavioral steps performed in order, with continuous adjustment for the shape of the available space, the wind, the anchor points, and the animal's own body length as a measuring unit. This entire program is encoded and inherited, running in a central nervous system containing on the order of 100,000 neurons, fewer than a housefly, orders of magnitude fewer than the smallest mammal. That such elaborate, adaptive, context-sensitive construction can emerge from so little tissue is one of the standing puzzles of animal behavior. Whatever intelligence is, it is not simply a matter of how much brain there is. The spider has almost none, and it builds a geometrically precise structure in the dark, correctly, the first time, with no instruction and no second chance. Spiders given drugs build webs that reveal what the drugs do. In the 1940s, and again in a much-cited NASA study in the 1990s, researchers dosed orb weavers with various substances and photographed the resulting webs. The changes were dramatic and specific. Caffeine produced the most chaotic structures of all, worse than amphetamine, worse than cannabis, a scattered wreck with no coherent spiral. Other compounds produced webs with regular geometry but incomplete coverage, or webs abandoned partway through. The suggestion was that web architecture could serve as a sensitive assay for the behavioral effects of a compound. Whatever the practical merits, the images remain unforgettable because the web is the animal's behavior made visible and permanent. Most creatures leave no trace of their inner state. The spider hangs its entire mental condition in a doorway where anyone can photograph it. A spider does not have ears, and it can still hear you. For a long time, it was assumed that spiders detected only vibrations conducted through solid surfaces. Work published in recent years has shown that orb weavers respond to airborne sound as well, using the web itself as an enormous external eardrum. The threads, being so fine and light, are moved directly by the pressure waves of sound in the air, and the spider standing at the hub feels that movement through the sensory organs in its legs. Effectively, the animal has built an auditory membrane thousands of times larger than its own body and stands in the middle of it. Some species have been observed turning toward a sound source and even crouching or adjusting web tension in response. Consider the strangeness of an animal that constructs its own sense organ outside itself, from a substance it secretes, and can rebuild it larger if it wishes. The spider's legs are covered in slits that measure the strain in its own skeleton. Arachnids possess sensory structures called slit sensilla, tiny openings in the exoskeleton that deform under mechanical stress, with a nerve ending sensing that deformation. In places, they are arranged in parallel groups called lyriform organs, resembling the strings of a harp. Their sensitivity is extraordinary, capable of detecting displacements on the order of a nanometer, roughly the width of a few atoms. Through these, the spider reads the tension in each radius of its web, and from the pattern of arriving vibrations it can determine where prey has struck, how large it is, and whether it is worth approaching or is a leaf, a raindrop, or a rival. The animal is not watching the web. It is listening to the geometry of it, holding 8 lines at once and interpreting the difference between them. The web may be part of the spider's mind, and this is a serious scientific proposal. The idea, discussed under the heading of extended cognition, is that the web performs functions that would otherwise require a nervous system. It filters signals, discarding irrelevant vibrations before they reach the animal. It stores information about tension and prior damage in its physical state. It can be adjusted, tightened, or reshaped to change what the spider is able to perceive, which is an act of tuning an external processing device. Some researchers argue that a spider with a web has cognitive capabilities that the same spider removed from its web does not have. Whether or not the language of cognition survives the argument, the underlying observation is difficult to dismiss. The boundary of a thinking creature may not be the boundary of its body. Something made of protein and hung in the dark may be doing part of the thinking. Spiders eat somewhere between 400 and 800 million tons of prey every year. A study published in 2017 estimated the global spider population at around 25 million tons of biomass, consuming that vast quantity of insects and other small animals annually. For comparison, the entire human population consumes something in the region of 400 million tons of meat and fish in a year. All the spiders on Earth collectively are eating on the order of what all the people on Earth are eating, and doing it invisibly in hedgerows and rafters and grass. Without them, the balance of terrestrial insect populations would be entirely different, and so would agriculture, and so would we. The most consequential appetites in the world are rarely the ones anybody notices. A jumping spider can see nearly as well as a pigeon, using eyes the size of a full stop. The two enormous forward-facing principal eyes of a salticid contain a long tube with a lens at one end and a retina at the other, and the retina itself is moved by muscles, scanning across the image like a searchlight. Their acuity is the finest known in any animal of comparable size and exceeds that of many vertebrates. Jumping spiders track prey visually, judge distance, plan detours around obstacles that take them temporarily out of sight of the target, and perform elaborate visual courtship dances. Some species have been shown to solve route-finding problems that require holding a goal in mind while it cannot be seen. All of this in an animal a few millimeters long that you would step over without noticing. Whatever we mean when we say a creature is simple, we are usually saying something about our attention rather than about the creature. One spider lives its entire life underwater inside a bubble it builds from silk. Argyronta aquatica, the diving bell spider, constructs a dome of silk anchored to submerged plants and then makes repeated trips to the surface, trapping air in the dense hairs of its abdomen and releasing it beneath the dome until the structure inflates. It lives inside this bubble, eats there, mates there, and lays eggs there. The bell is not merely a store of air. It functions as a physical gill, with oxygen diffusing inward from the surrounding water and carbon dioxide diffusing out, so the spider can remain submerged for far longer than the trapped volume alone would allow. An air-breathing animal solved the problem of living underwater by carrying a piece of the sky down with it, and then building a machine that refills it from the water. It did not evolve lungs for water. It engineered around the problem instead. The oldest spider ever recorded lived for 43 years in a burrow in Western Australia. She was known to researchers as number 16, a trapdoor spider of the species Gaius villacis, monitored as part of a long-term population study begun in 1974. Trapdoor spiders dig a silk-lined burrow with a hinged lid and may remain in the same one for their entire lives, waiting just beneath the door for the vibration of something passing. Number 16 was found dead in 2016, not of age, but from the sting of a parasitic wasp. She had occupied the same small hole in the ground since before the researcher who first tagged her had finished her own career. Consider a life spent entirely within a few centimeters of one place, over 4 decades, through droughts and floods and the arrival and departure of the people watching. Patience is not a virtue for such an animal. It is the whole strategy, and it worked for 43 years. A few spider species live in cooperative colonies of thousands. Aenlicimus eximius, found in Central and South America, builds vast communal sheet webs that can extend for meters through vegetation and house many thousands of individuals. They hunt together, subduing prey far larger than any one of them could hand. DLE. They share the food. They cooperate in raising young, and females will feed offspring that are not their own. There is no queen and no caste system as in ants or bees, merely a large number of related individuals tolerating one another and acting in concert. Sociality has evolved independently only a handful of times among the 50,000 spider species, and it seems to be a difficult and often unstable arrangement for animals otherwise so committed to solitude and cannibalism. It is worth noticing how rare and how fragile cooperation is, even among creatures for whom it clearly works. One spider is very nearly a vegetarian. Bagheera kiplingi, a jumping spider from Central America, obtains most of its diet from the nutrient-rich Beltian bodies that acacia trees produce on their leaf tips to feed the ants that defend them. The spider spends its life stealing from those ants, dodging patrols, living within the acacia, and eating the tree's own bribery. It is the only spider known to be predominantly herbivorous, in a lineage where predation is close to definitional. Its name is a small act of literary affection, borrowed from the Black Panther of Kipling's stories, which is a fitting joke for a creature that lives among aggressive guards by moving carefully and taking what it needs. Even in the most consistent groups in nature, something eventually breaks the pattern. Life does not enforce its own rules very strictly. A spider digests its meal outside its own body. Having subdued its prey, the spider injects digestive enzymes into the tissue and waits while the interior of the insect breaks down into a liquid, then draws that liquid out through its narrow mouth. The gut of a spider is not built to handle solids. What remains afterward is an intact husk, hollow and light, that still looks entirely like an insect until it is touched. Every corner of a window frame accumulates these, the exoskeletons of flies with nothing inside them. The strategy makes a certain economic sense for an animal with no jaws to chew and no way to carry a meal home. It also means the spider consumes the parts that matter and leaves behind the packaging. In a still house, on a dusty sill, the residue of 100 small transactions is sitting there, weighing nothing. Spider venom is being developed into painkillers and stroke medicines. Venoms are chemical libraries, often containing hundreds of distinct peptides, each shaped by evolution to interfere precisely with a specific ion channel or receptor in the nervous system of prey. That precision is exactly what pharmacology wants and finds so difficult to design. Peptides from the venom of the Australian funnel web spider have shown protective effects on brain tissue in laboratory models of stroke by blocking a channel activated by the acid conditions that follow oxygen loss. Others target the sodium channels involved in the transmission of pain and are being investigated as non-opioid analgesics. The animal was never trying to help anyone. It spent millions of years refining a molecular key for a particular lock, and it happens that we carry a lock of similar shape. The orb web is a mathematical object, and the spider builds it with its own body as the ruler. The radial spokes are laid first, roughly evenly spaced, the spider measuring angles by the reach of its legs and the tension in the threads it is standing on. Then comes a temporary spiral of non-sticky silk, laid outward from the hub, which serves as scaffolding. The spider then works inward from the edge, laying the sticky capture spiral and eating the temporary spiral as it goes, using the discarded scaffold as a spacing guide for the new turns. The final geometry approximates a logarithmic spiral in some species, the same curve found in nautilus shells and galaxies, arising here from nothing more than an animal keeping one leg on the previous thread while it lays the next. Elegance in nature is almost never designed. It is what happens when a simple rule is followed consistently in a space that has a shape of its own. Some spiders write conspicuous patterns into their webs, and nobody is certain why. Certain orb weavers, notably the genus Argiope, add thick zigzag bands of bright white silk to the hub of the web, structures called stabilimenta. Explanations have multiplied for over a century. They may stabilize the web, as the name assumes. They may warn birds away so the web is not destroyed by a bird flying through it. They may reflect ultraviolet light in a way that attracts insects, since many flowers signal in the same range. They may camouflage the spider by breaking up its outline. Evidence exists for several of these, and none of them explains every case. It is refreshing to encounter a question this visible, this easy to observe, and this thoroughly unresolved. There are still ordinary things in gardens that nobody can account for. One species builds a large fake spider in its web and hides behind it. In the Peruvian Amazon and in parts of the Philippines, certain small spiders in the genus Cyclosa construct a decoy several times their own size out of debris, leaf fragments, insect husks, and silk, shaped with a body and radiating legs, positioned prominently at the center of the web. The builder, a few millimeters long, sits nearby and when disturbed, shakes the web so that the decoy appears to move. The purpose seems to be to distract or intimidate predators, particularly wasps. An animal with a nervous system smaller than a poppy seed is constructing a sculpture of an animal at the wrong scale and animating it. Whatever process produced that behavior did not need imagination to arrive at something that looks exactly like it. Silk is not a spider invention. It has been discovered independently many times. Silkworms make it. Caddisfly larvae make it underwater, spinning adhesive silk that cures in water to glue together cases of sand and stone, a trick that has attracted intense interest from surgeons seeking an adhesive that works on wet tissue. Certain ants use their own larvae as living glue guns, holding them in their jaws and squeezing to bind leaves into nests. Some beetles, some flies, some mites, and a few crustaceans produce silks of their own. Velvet worms shoot jets of protein slime that solidify on contact to entangle prey. The chemistry differs in each case, sometimes entirely, but the solution is the same shape. A liquid protein that turns solid on demand is so useful that life keeps reinventing it, in different phyla, in the ocean and on land, over hundreds of millions of years. A violin was once strung with spider silk, and it sounded unlike anything else. In 2012, a Japanese researcher, Shigeyoshi Asaki, who had spent years studying the mechanical properties of dragline silk, twisted together bundles of thousands of individual threads harvested from golden orb weavers to produce violin strings. Under the microscope, the twisted fibers had deformed from round to polygonal cross-sections and packed together with almost no gaps between them, a density that ordinary strings do not achieve. Musicians who played them described a softer, deeper timbre, with a complexity of overtones unlike gut or steel. It took thousands of threads for a single string. Nobody needed this. Somebody simply wondered what a spider's web would sound like if you could make it hold a note, and then spent years finding out. Some of the finest work anyone does begins as an entirely unnecessary question. The spider does not stick to its own web, and the reason is partly technique. It was long assumed there must be an oil or a coating on the legs, and there does appear to be some contribution from the lipids on the cuticle. But high-speed filming has shown that the main protection is mechanical and behavioral. The spider walks on the non-sticky radial threads wherever possible. Its feet are covered in fine hairs that reduce the contact area with any glue droplet to almost nothing. And the claws at the tip of each leg grip the thread while the leg is withdrawn along a precise path that peels away from the adhesive rather than pulling straight off it, which requires far less force. The animal is not immune to its own trap. It simply knows how to move through it, and the knowledge is in the anatomy of its feet. One spider hunts by swinging a single sticky ball on a thread. Bolus's spiders build no web at all. At night, a female hangs from a horizontal line and dangles a short thread with a large droplet of glue at the end. Then she releases a chemical blend into the air that mimics the sex pheromone of a particular species of moth. Male moths, following the scent upwind, arrive expecting a mate, and she swings the boluses and strikes them out of the air. Some species can alter the pheromone blend through the night to match the different moth species active at different hours, changing their advertisement to suit the audience. This is not simply predation. It is counterfeiting a language, then fishing with a single line in the dark, and adjusting the lie every few hours as the customers change. A spider that spits will glue its prey to the floor from a distance. Spiders of the genus Cytodes have unusually large venom glands, divided so that part produces venom and part produces liquid silk, and the two are mixed and expelled through the fangs. The spider approaches slowly, sometimes over many minutes, and then, from a body length or two away, spits a zigzag of sticky, venomous threads across the prey in a burst lasting a few thousandths of a second. The threads contract as they land, pinning the animal down. The spitting spider has moved the silk from the back of the body to the front and turned a construction material into a projectile. Evolution rarely invents. It relocates, repurposes, and rewires what is already there and calls the result a new animal. Spiders repair their webs rather than replace them, and they know exactly what is missing. When a section of an orb web is damaged, the spider does not usually start again. It walks the remaining threads, reading tension through its legs, locating the boundaries of the gap, and then rebuilds only the missing radii and the affected turns of the spiral, splicing the new work into the old. In some experiments, researchers have cut sections from webs at night and returned to find the repair so cleanly integrated that the join is difficult to identify. The animal is holding a model of the structure, or at least enough of one to know what a complete web feels like, and where this one departs from that. There is no plan written down anywhere. There is only an animal in the dark, walking its own construction, feeling for the place where the tension stops making sense. Modern hemostatic dressings work on the principle the ancient healers stumbled into without knowing it. The most widely used military and emergency dressings today are gauzes impregnated with kaolin, a fine aluminosilicate clay. Kaolin carries a strongly negative surface charge, and when blood contacts it, factor XII activates on that surface exactly as it does on glass, or on soil minerals, or on a mesh of foreign fiber. The dressing is packed into the wound, pressure is applied, and the cascade is triggered directly at the site of the injury rather than waiting for the slower natural sequence. It is the same mechanism, refined, standardized, sterilized, and tested in trials rather than in barns. 4,000 years separate the cobweb from the clay. The chemistry that made both of them work was sitting in the blood the entire time, unnamed, waiting for someone to be curious enough about their own success to ask why. The first generation of these dressings was a mineral powder that could burn the patient. The original formulation of the best-known hemostatic agent used a zeolite, a porous mineral that absorbs water aggressively from blood. That absorption concentrated the clotting factors, which worked, and it also released a large amount of heat. Because the adsorption of water onto zeolite is strongly exothermic, temperatures in the wound could rise high enough to cause thermal injury to tissue. Reports of burns accumulated, and the formulation was reworked into a hydrated form, and eventually the product was replaced entirely with kaolin-based gauze that produces no meaningful heat at all. This is what iteration actually looks like. Not a discovery followed by triumph, but a discovery followed by an unpleasant side effect, followed by a decade of grinding revision by people whose names do not appear on anything. Chitosan dressings work by electrical attraction rather than by the clotting cascade at all. Chitosan is derived from chitin, the structural material of shrimp and crab shells and of insect exoskeletons, and it is one of the most abundant biopolymers on Earth. In solution, it carries a positive charge. Red blood cells carry a negative one. A chitosan dressing pressed into a wound attracts red cells and platelets directly onto its surface and binds them into a dense, adherent seal, independent of coagulation factors. This means it can work in a patient whose clotting is impaired by drugs, by hypothermia, or by massive blood loss. There is something pleasing about a material that stops bleeding by simply having the opposite charge to blood. No enzymes, no cascade, no biology at all beyond the fact that opposites attract. Sometimes the solution is not a mechanism, it is a property. Some surgical hemostats are made from cellulose that has been chemically altered until it dissolves. Oxidized regenerated cellulose, a knitted fabric produced from plant cellulose and then treated to make it acidic and absorbable, is laid directly onto oozing surfaces during operations. It forms a gelatinous mass on contact with blood, provides a physical matrix, and is broken down and cleared by the body over a few weeks. Gelatin sponges made from purified animal collagen work similarly by absorbing many times their weight in blood and providing a scaffold that holds the clot in place. These sit in every operating theater in the world. They are, in essence, engineered versions of the moss, the lint, the puffball, and the web. The materials have changed completely. The idea has not changed at all. One class of surgical sealant is made from human blood proteins, applied like glue. Fibrin sealants are prepared from concentrated fibrinogen and thrombin, usually derived from pooled human plasma, kept in separate syringes and mixed at the nozzle as they are sprayed onto the tissue. The moment they meet, the reaction that normally takes a cascade of a dozen enzymatic steps happens instantly and locally, and a fibrin clot forms exactly where the surgeon directs it. It seals raw surfaces on the liver and spleen, secures skin grafts, and closes leaks in tissue too fragile to hold a stitch. This is the final step of the clotting system. Extracted from the body, purified, and handed back as a tool. The blood learned to make glue long before we did. We simply worked out how to buy it in a cartridge. A cheap old drug that stops clots from dissolving saves a great many lives. Tranexamic acid blocks the binding site through which plasminogen attaches to fibrin, which prevents the conversion to plasmin and slows the breakdown of clots that have already formed. It does not create clots, it protects them. A very large international trial published in 2010, enrolling more than 20,000 trauma patients across dozens of countries, showed a clear reduction in death from bleeding when the drug was given within 3 hours of injury. It is inexpensive, stable at room temperature, and requires no refrigeration or special equipment, which means it can be carried in an ambulance in any country in the world. It was first synthesized in the 1960s by a Japanese husband and wife research team, Yutako and Shasuke Akamoto, who were investigating why women were dying of postpartum hemorrhage. She had wanted, for decades, to see it used for that purpose. She lived long enough to see the trial confirm it. Blood transfusion killed people for centuries because nobody knew there were blood types. Attempts to transfuse blood go back to the 17th century, using animal blood, with results that were sometimes fatal and sometimes inexplicably fine. The reason emerged in 1901, when Karl Landsteiner mixed the blood of his colleagues in various combinations and observed that some pairings caused the red cells to clump violently while others did not. From this, he identified the ABO groups. The clumping is caused by antibodies in the recipient's plasma recognizing foreign sugar structures on the surface of the donated red cells. Before that observation, transfusion was a lottery played with a person's life. After it, it became one of the most reliable interventions in medicine. An enormous amount of suffering was ended by a man in Vienna carefully mixing samples on a glass slide and writing down which ones turned cloudy. Blood can be stored only because someone worked out how to stop it clotting in the bottle. The obstacle to blood banking was never collection. It was that blood, removed from the body, does the exact thing it is designed to do. The solution was sodium citrate, which binds calcium and therefore halts the cascade, discovered independently by several researchers around 1914 and 1915, just as the First World War created a need for it on an unimaginable scale. Add glucose and the red cells survive longer in storage. Refrigerate and they last weeks rather than days. From this came the blood bank, and from the blood bank came the possibility of major surgery, of trauma centers, of transplantation. Nearly everything ambitious that modern medicine does depends on a small volume of citrate in the bottom of a plastic bag. The greatest advances are often not the operations. They are the quiet logistics that made the operations survivable. Spider silk can now be made by bacteria, and the difficulty was never the gene. Inserting a spidrine gene into Escherichia coli is straightforward. Getting the bacterium to produce a useful protein is not. Natural spidrins are extremely long, highly repetitive, and rich in glycine and alanine, and bacterial cells struggle with all three of those properties. The repetitive DNA is unstable and tends to delete itself during replication. The translation machinery runs out of the specific transfer RNAs the sequence demands, and the enormous proteins aggregate inside the cell before they can be harvested. Researchers have solved these in stages, engineering the codons, supplementing the amino acid pools, and building shortened versions that keep the key structural motifs. The result is a protein that is real but not identical to what the spider makes. Copying nature is rarely a matter of obtaining the recipe. The recipe was the easy part. Goats have been engineered to produce spider silk protein in their milk. A gene for a spidrine, coupled to a promoter that activates only in the mammary gland, was inserted into goat embryos, and the resulting animals secreted the silk protein into their milk, from which it could be purified in quantity. The technique attracted enormous attention in the early 2000s, and herds were maintained for years. It solved the problem of producing protein at scale and left untouched the far harder problem of turning that protein into a fiber. Milk-derived spidrine is not silk. It is the raw material, dissolved in the wrong solvent, in the wrong conformation, with none of the ordering that the spinning duct provides. Consider the strangeness of standing in a field in Utah in the morning, holding a bucket of protein that a spider would know how to make into a rope, and not knowing yourself. Silkworms have been modified to spin spider silk instead of their own. This approach sidesteps the hardest problem entirely. The silkworm already possesses an enormous silk gland, an evolved spinning apparatus, and 4,000 years of domestication making it docile and farmable at industrial scale. Genome editing has been used to replace portions of the silkworm's own fibrin gene with spider sequences, producing animals that spin a composite fiber significantly tougher than ordinary silkworm silk. Some recent work reports fibers approaching or exceeding natural spider dragline in certain measures. The insect does the spinning, which is the part we cannot do. It is a kind of collaboration in which one party has no idea it is involved, contributing the only skill in the arrangement that could not be bought. Building an artificial spinning duct has proved harder than building the protein. Laboratories have constructed microfluidic devices that attempt to reproduce what happens inside the spider. A narrowing channel, a controlled drop in pH, the exchange of sodium for potassium, the removal of water, and precisely staged shear as the fluid accelerates. Fibers emerge. They are often good. They are still, as a rule, not as good as the animals, and the gap has narrowed slowly across 3 decades of serious effort. The spider does this in a structure a few millimeters long, at ambient temperature in water, powered by the energy from eating flies, with a failure rate near 0. We do it in a laboratory with pumps and syringes, and a graduate student watching a screen. It is worth being honest about that comparison. There are still things a small animal in a hedge does better than the entire apparatus of human materials science. You cannot farm spiders, and this single fact has shaped an entire industry. Silkworms can be raised in trays by the million, stacked in a shed fed mulberry leaves, indifferent to one another. Spiders cannot. They are territorial, solitary, and in most species cannibalistic, and a container of spiders becomes, within a short time, a container holding one very well-fed spider. They also produce silk in small quantities and only as they need it. This is why every attempt at commercial spider silk has gone around the animal rather than through it, into bacteria, yeast, plants, goats, and modified silkworms. The bottleneck in one of the most promising materials of the century is not chemistry or engineering. It is temperament. An animal that will not tolerate its own species has quietly limited what humanity can manufacture, and no amount of funding has changed its mind. Silk tubes have been used to guide severed nerves back to one another. When a peripheral nerve is cut, the fibers beyond the injury degenerate, and regrowth from the stump is slow, disorganized, and often fails to find the correct path. A nerve conduit is a hollow tube bridging the gap, holding the two ends aligned and providing a protected channel for the axons to grow through. Silk fibrin makes an excellent conduit. It is strong enough to hold its shape, permeable enough to allow nutrients through, tolerated by the tissue, and it degrades over months as the nerve reconnects. Studies in animals have shown regeneration through silk conduits comparable in some measures to grafts taken from the patient's own nerve, which is the standard against which everything is measured. A tube that holds a road open while it is being rebuilt, and then quietly disappears when the traffic returns. Silk scaffolds are being used to grow bone and cartilage. Silk fibrin can be processed into porous three-dimensional sponges, into meshes of electrospun nanofibers, into gels and films, and the geometry can be controlled at the scale that cells notice. Bone-forming cells seeded onto such a scaffold will attach, spread, multiply, and begin depositing mineral, using the silk as a framework and gradually replacing it as it degrades. The mechanical stiffness of the scaffold matters enormously, because stem cells read the physical rigidity of their surroundings and differentiate accordingly, becoming bone on a hard substrate and softer tissues on a compliant one. Silk can be tuned across that range. Your cells are, in a real sense, feeling their environment and deciding what to become. A material that can be made to feel like bone can persuade a cell to build bone. Silk can hold a vaccine stable at room temperature for months. This may be the most quietly consequential application of all. Many vaccines and biological drugs must be kept cold from the moment they are made until the moment they are given, and the cold chain is expensive, fragile, and absent across much of the world. Proteins dried into a silk fibrin matrix are held immobilized within the beta sheet structure, physically prevented from unfolding or aggregating, and studies have shown vaccines retaining potency after months at temperatures well above refrigeration, in some cases above body temperature. The silk simply holds the molecules still. A great deal of medicine fails not because the drug does not work, but because it did not survive the journey. A material that removes the refrigerator from that journey changes who can be reached. Silk has been made into electronics designed to dissolve inside the body. Thin films of silk can be cast with extraordinary optical clarity, patterned at the nanoscale, and used as substrates for tiny circuits of magnesium and silicon. Devices built this way have been implanted to monitor temperature or deliver heat to a surgical site to prevent infection, operating for a set period, and then dissolving completely, the silk degrading and the metals absorbing at harmless concentrations. There is no removal operation and nothing left behind. Transient electronics, as the field is called, inverts the usual ambition of engineering. Every other device is designed to last. These are designed to vanish on schedule, and getting the schedule right is the entire art. It takes a certain confidence to build something well and intend for it to disappear. Silk films have been placed on the human eye and the eardrum. Because silk can be made transparent, thin, flexible, and tolerated by delicate tissue, it has been investigated as a membrane for repairing perforated eardrums, where it serves as a scaffold for the epithelium to grow across, and as a carrier for growing corneal cells for transplantation onto the surface of the eye. Both of these are tissues where scarring is unacceptable and where anything left behind causes harm. In trials, patches have supported healing and then been absorbed. Consider the distance traveled here. From a gray handful in a barn, pressed into a wound by someone with no idea what they were holding, to a transparent membrane laid across the surface of a living eye by a surgeon under a microscope. The material barely changed. Everything else did. A wound heals in 4 overlapping phases, and the first one is hemostasis. The stages are usually described as hemostasis, inflammation, proliferation, and remodeling, though they blend into one another rather than following in tidy sequence. Everything we have discussed so far, the vessel spasm, the platelet plug, the fibrin mesh, belongs to the first phase, and it is finished within minutes. The fibrin clot is not only a seal. It becomes the provisional scaffold on which every subsequent phase is built, a temporary matrix that arriving cells will crawl along and gradually replace. This is why the clot matters beyond the bleeding. It is the first draft of the new tissue, laid down in seconds, under emergency conditions, by a system that has no idea what shape the wound is. Everything that follows is written over it. Neutrophils arrive first, and they fight by exploding. Within an hour, neutrophils, the most abundant white cells in blood, are drawn to the site by chemical signals released from damaged tissue and from platelets. They engulf bacteria and debris and release enzymes and reactive oxygen compounds that destroy what they cannot swallow. Some of them do something stranger. They eject their own DNA in a spray of sticky threads studded with antimicrobial proteins, forming a net that traps bacteria in the extracellular space. The cell dies in the process. These structures are called neutrophil extracellular traps, and they are, quite literally, a web made of chromosomes, spun by a dying cell to catch something too small to see. There is a web at every level of this story. Your body has been making them all along. Macrophages arrive next, and they run the entire operation. These are the large scavenging cells that clear dead neutrophils, digest debris, and crucially, coordinate what happens afterwards through the signals they release. Early in a wound, they adopt an aggressive, inflammatory character, killing and clearing. Later they switch, becoming a repair-oriented phenotype that secretes growth factors, summoning fibroblasts and stimulating new blood vessels. If they fail to make that switch, the wound stalls in a state of chronic inflammation that will not close, which is exactly what happens in many diabetic ulcers. The same cell type is the destroyer and then the builder, and healing depends on the timing of the transition. It is a reminder that in the body, as elsewhere, the difficulty is rarely in doing the necessary violence. It is in knowing when to stop. Fibroblasts move in and begin manufacturing the replacement tissue. These are the workhorse cells of connective tissue, and they migrate into the wound along the fibrin scaffold, multiplying as they go, and begin secreting collagen and other matrix components. Collagen is the most abundant protein in your body, roughly a third of your total protein, a triple helix of 3 chains wound around one another, and it is the tensile element in skin, tendon, bone, and vessel wall. The first collagen laid into a wound is a thinner, disorganized type, deposited quickly with no regard for direction. It is scaffolding, not architecture. The tissue formed at this stage, pink, bumpy, and richly vascular, is called granulation tissue, and it fills the defect from the base upward. Speed first, quality later. The body is not building for permanence yet. It is closing the hole. New blood vessels grow into the wound, sprouting from the ones nearby. The process is called angiogenesis, and it begins when cells starved of oxygen release signaling molecules, principally vascular endothelial growth factor. Endothelial cells in adjacent capillaries respond by degrading the membrane around their vessel and extending a sprout toward the signal, led by a single specialized tip cell that navigates while the cells behind it multiply to form the tube. Sprouts meet, fuse, and hollow out, and blood begins to flow through a vessel that did not exist a day earlier. No tissue can be rebuilt without a supply, and no supply exists in a wound until it is grown. Somewhere under a scab on your hand, a road network is being surveyed, dug, and opened to traffic by cells that have never done it before and will never do it again. Some fibroblasts become contractile and pull the wound closed over days. Under the influence of mechanical tension and specific growth factors, a proportion of the fibroblasts in a healing wound differentiate into myofibroblasts, acquiring bundles of actin and myosin similar to those in smooth muscle. Anchored to the surrounding matrix, they contract, and collectively, they draw the wound margins together, sometimes reducing the area of an open wound by a large fraction. It is slow, sustained, and coordinated across thousands of cells with no communication beyond the tension in the matrix they share. When the wound is closed, most of them undergo programmed cell death and disappear. When they fail to disappear, the contraction continues and produces the type, disabling scars seen after severe burns. A workforce that assembles itself, pulls for weeks, and then dismantles itself on completion, and the disease is what happens when they refuse to leave. Remodeling continues for more than a year after the wound looks finished. Once the surface is closed, the hurried collagen laid down early is gradually replaced. Enzymes called matrix metalloproteinases dismantle the disorganized fibers while fibroblasts deposit stronger, better-aligned collagen in their place, oriented along the lines of tension the tissue actually experiences. The scar becomes paler, flatter, and stronger over months. It never recovers full strength. Scarred skin typically reaches around 70 to 80% of the tensile strength of the original at best, and that is the ceiling. Somewhere on your body is a mark from an afternoon you no longer remember, and for a year after it, without any awareness on your part, cells were still quietly taking apart the emergency repair and rebuilding it properly. The event was over long before the work was. A scar is skin with things missing. Look closely at any scar and it lacks hair follicles, sweat glands, sebaceous glands, and the fine ridged texture of surrounding skin. The collagen within it is laid in parallel bundles rather than the intricate basket weave of normal dermis, which is why it looks different and behaves differently, less flexible, differently colored, sometimes without sensation. The body, in an adult, does not rebuild the appendages. It patches the structure and accepts the loss of function. This is a repair, not a regeneration, and the distinction is precise. Your skin was capable of building follicles and glands once in the womb, and the instructions are still in every cell, and they are not run again. A scar is not damage. It is the place where the body chose closure over perfection, and closure is usually the right choice. A wound in an unborn child heals without leaving a scar. In the first 2 trimesters of gestation, fetal skin wounds heal by regenerating the original tissue completely, with normal collagen architecture, restored hair follicles and glands, and no visible mark. This has been demonstrated in animals and observed in humans following fetal surgery. The mechanism is not fully understood, and several factors appear to contribute. A very different inflammatory response, with fewer neutrophils and a distinct profile of signaling molecules, a different composition of the surrounding matrix rich in hyaluronic acid, and a different population of fibroblasts. At some point in development, the capacity is lost, and the body switches from regeneration to repair. Something we can all do before we are born, we cannot do afterwards. Understanding what is switched off, and whether it could be switched back on, is one of the most actively pursued questions in the field. A salamander can regrow an entire limb, including the bones and the nerves. The axolotl, a neotenic salamander from the lakes of central Mexico, can regenerate amputated legs, portions of the heart, sections of the spinal cord, and parts of the brain repeatedly without scarring. At the wound surface, cells revert to a less specialized state and form a structure called a blastema, which then rebuilds the missing part with correct anatomy and proportion. It knows how much is missing. Amputate at the wrist and it grows a hand. Amputate at the shoulder and it grows an arm. The axolotl genome is one of the largest of any animal sequenced, more than 10 times the size of ours, which has made the work slow. In the wild, the species is now critically endangered, its habitat reduced to canals on the edge of Mexico City. An animal that may hold the answer to human regeneration is going extinct in a drainage ditch. Sometimes healing does not know when to stop. A keloid is a scar that grows beyond the boundaries of the original wound, continuing to deposit collagen into surrounding healthy skin, forming a raised, firm, often itchy mass that may be many times the size of the injury that started it. Unlike a hypertrophic scar, which stays within the wound and often improves over time, a keloid does not respect the edge and rarely regresses. It is more common in people with darker skin, and the tendency runs in families. Treatment is difficult because cutting out a keloid creates a wound that heals into a larger one. In this condition, the machinery of repair is not defective. It is working properly and has simply not received the instruction to stop. Almost every process that heals us can, if it continues past its purpose, become the thing that harms us. Keeping a wound moist makes it heal faster, and this was only established in 1962. For most of history, the goal of wound care was to dry the wound and let a hard scab form, and this was believed to be both natural and beneficial. In 1962, a researcher named George Winter published a study in which wounds on pigs covered with a plastic film, kept moist, reepithelialized roughly twice as quickly as identical wounds left open to dry. The explanation is straightforward once seen. Epithelial cells migrating across a wound must stay wet to move. When the surface dries, they are forced to burrow beneath the crust through the moist tissue below, a longer and slower path. The entire modern industry of occlusive and hydrocolloid dressings descends from that single observation. Thousands of years of confident practice, reversed by one careful experiment, on the basis of something anyone could have measured at any point. Penicillin was found because someone did not clean up before going on holiday. In 1928, Alexander Fleming returned to his laboratory at St. Mary's Hospital in London to find that a culture plate of Staphylococcus had been contaminated by a mold, and that around the mold there was a clear zone where no bacteria grew. He identified the mold as a Penicillium species and named the substance penicillin. But he was unable to purify or stabilize it, and the work languished for a decade. It was Howard Florey, Ernst Chain, and Norman Heatley at Oxford who, In the early years of the Second World War, made it into a drug, growing the mold in bedpans and improvising the purification, working in a country under bombardment with almost no money. Fleming's name is the one everybody knows. It usually is. The observation is remembered, and the 10 years of grinding chemistry that made it useful are not. Your skin is covered in bacteria that are helping to defend it. The skin microbiome comprises hundreds of species, distributed by region, with oily areas, moist areas, and dry areas, each supporting distinct communities. These residents occupy space, consume resources, and produce compounds that inhibit the growth of pathogenic organisms. Some species make antimicrobial peptides that specifically target Staphylococcus aureus. When the skin barrier is broken, this community is disrupted, and its members can become dangerous where they should not be. But on intact skin, they are part of the defense rather than a threat to it. The idea that the surface of a healthy person should be sterile is simply wrong. You are an ecosystem, densely populated, mostly at peace, and the peace is maintained not by the absence of microbes, but by the presence of the right ones. Every clot must be built in one place and forbidden a millimeter away. And this is the hardest problem the system solves. A cascade designed to amplify is intrinsically dangerous. If clotting spread freely through the circulation, a cut finger would kill you. The body prevents this with a set of overlapping breaks. Healthy endothelial cells lining the vessels present a smooth, negatively charged, actively anticoagulant surface, secreting nitric oxide and prostacyclin to keep platelets quiet. They display thrombomodulin, which converts thrombin from a clot builder into an activator of protein C, which then degrades key clotting factors. Antithrombin circulates continuously, mopping up stray activated enzymes. Heparin sulfate on the vessel wall accelerates that mopping. 1,000-fold. The clot exists only in the small volume where the damage removed all of these restraints at once. It is not built where it is needed. It is permitted where nothing is left to forbid it. When the control fails everywhere at once, the result is both massive clotting and massive bleeding. Disseminated intravascular coagulation is a catastrophic state, triggered by severe infection, major trauma, certain cancers, or obstetric emergencies, in which the coagulation system activates throughout the circulation. Microscopic clots form in small vessels across the body, damaging organs by starving them of blood. And because this consumes platelets and clotting factors faster than they can be replaced, the patient simultaneously begins to bleed uncontrollably from every puncture site and mucous membrane. Clotting and hemorrhage at the same time, in the same body, from the same cause. It is one of the most difficult conditions in critical care, and the treatment is largely to find and reverse whatever set it off. The system that protects you is powerful enough that losing control of it is worse than not having it. Cold blood does not clot properly, and this kills people who are already bleeding. The enzymes of the coagulation cascade are proteins, And like all enzymes, their activity is temperature dependent. Below about 34 degrees Celsius, clotting slows markedly, and platelet function is impaired further still. A patient bleeding heavily is losing warm blood, is often lying exposed, and is frequently given fluids at room temperature, and so becomes cold, which makes the bleeding worse, which makes them colder. Acidosis from poor tissue perfusion impairs the enzymes further. Trauma surgeons call this combination the lethal triad, and preventing it with warmed fluids, warming blankets, and speed is now understood to be as important as any surgical technique. Sometimes the decisive intervention in saving a life is not a drug or an operation. It is a blanket, applied early enough. A patient can be given so much fluid that their blood forgets how to clot. For decades, the standard response to major hemorrhage was to replace lost volume with clear intravenous fluid to maintain blood pressure. It is now understood that this dilutes the remaining clotting factors and platelets, raises the pressure enough to dislodge clots that had formed, and cools the patient. The modern approach, developed largely from military experience, is damage control resuscitation, giving blood products in ratios approximating whole blood, limiting clear fluids, and accepting a lower blood pressure until the bleeding is surgically controlled. In some systems, whole blood itself has returned, after decades in which it was routinely separated into components. Medicine had spent 50 years taking blood apart. It turned out that for a person who has lost blood, the thing they most need is blood. Wounds heal faster during the day than at night, and the difference is substantial. Analysis of burn patients found that injuries sustained during the night took significantly longer to heal than comparable injuries sustained during the day, by a margin of around 11 days on average. The explanation appears to lie in the circadian clock running inside individual skin cells. Fibroblasts and keratinocytes have their own internal oscillators governing when they are most ready to migrate and divide, and a wound that occurs when those cells are in their active phase gets a faster start. The body is not uniformly ready to repair itself at all hours. It has a schedule, running in every cell independently, coordinated with the light outside. Even at the level of a single cell in your skin, there is a sense of what time it is. Sleep is when much of the repair actually happens. Growth hormone is released in pulses, the largest of which occurs during the first period of deep slow-wave sleep. Protein synthesis rises. Inflammatory signaling is regulated on a daily cycle. Studies restricting sleep have shown measurably slower wound healing and impaired immune response, and in animal models, severe sleep deprivation delays healing dramatically. The body is not idle at night. It is doing the work it cannot do while you are using it for other things, and it has arranged for you to be unconscious while it does so. There is a reason that lying still in the dark feels like something being repaid. Something is being repaid. Whatever you have spent today, this is when it is put back. Willow bark was used for pain for thousands of years, and it was right. Sumerian tablets, Egyptian papyri, Hippocrates, and folk practice across Europe all record the chewing of willow bark or leaves for pain and fever. The active compound, salicin, is metabolized in the body into salicylic acid, which inhibits the enzymes that produce prostaglandins, the molecules responsible for inflammation, pain sensitization, and fever. In 1897, a chemist at Bayer produced a motif, wide, less irritating form, acetylsalicylic acid, and it became aspirin, still one of the most consumed drugs on Earth, and later found to have an entirely separate effect on platelets that made it a cornerstone of cardiovascular medicine. 4,000 years of people chewing bark, and every one of them was doing real pharmacology without a word for it. A country doctor learned the treatment for heart failure from a woman in Shropshire. In the 1770s, William Withering encountered a herbal remedy for dropsy, the massive fluid swelling caused by failing hearts, used by an elderly woman in the county. He identified foxglove as the active ingredient, and then spent 10 years doing something rare for his era, administering it systematically, recording doses and outcomes for over 150 patients, and documenting the failures alongside the successes. He established both that it worked and that the margin between an effective dose and a fatal one was dangerously narrow. Digitalis compounds derived from foxglove are still used today. He did not simply accept the folk remedy, and he did not dismiss it either. He tested it, which is the entire difference between the 2,000 years before him and the 200 years after. A drug that has saved millions of lives from malaria was found in a 4th century Chinese manuscript. In the 1960s, a Chinese research program searched traditional texts for anti-malarial candidates. Tu Yaoyu, a scientist working with limited equipment, screened hundreds of preparations and found a promising extract of sweet wormwood that performed inconsistently. Returning to a 4th century text by Ji Hong, she noticed the instruction to soak the herb in cold water and wring it out, rather than to boil it, and realized that heat was destroying the compound. Extracting at low temperature gave a consistent, powerfully active substance. That compound was artemisinin. She tested it on herself first. She received a Nobel Prize in 2015, more than 4 decades later. The ancient text did not contain the drug. It contained one crucial procedural detail that nobody had thought to take seriously. Most folk remedies do not work, and this is why the ones that do matter so much. Systematic surveys of traditional medicine turn up thousands of preparations, and the great majority show no useful activity when tested properly. Some are actively harmful. This is not a criticism of the people who used them, who were doing the best that could be done without controlled comparison, but it is the necessary context for every story of a folk cure vindicated. Those stories are memorable precisely because they are rare. The value of traditional knowledge lies in the fact that it narrows the search, pointing to a few thousand candidates out of a chemical universe of billions. It is a filter, not an answer. Reverence and skepticism are not opposites here. You need both at once, and holding both is the harder skill. The web and the clot are the same idea, arrived at twice. This is where the story settles. Inside the wound, thrombin cleaves fibrinogen and the fragments assemble themselves into branching fibers that tangle into a three-dimensional mesh and trap the cells within it. Outside the wound, in the corner of a room, a spider has taken a concentrated protein solution and drawn it into fibers that branch and cross and trap what moves into them. Both are protein. Both are meshes. Both are built to catch something in flight and hold it still. The one in your blood evolved 500 million years ago in an animal in a warm sea. The one in the barn evolved separately, in a different phylum, for a different purpose, and ended up being pressed against the first by a human hand that understood neither. Two solutions to the problem of stopping motion, meeting in a cut on somebody's arm, in a room lit by fire. The ancient healers found a real effect for the wrong reasons, and that is how nearly everything begins. They were right that the web helped. They were wrong about why, wrong about the danger, and wrong about the illnesses they extended it to. But their observation was accurate, and it was accurate for long enough and across enough separate cultures that it survived into a period when someone could finally test it. That is not a small contribution. Most of science begins as a noticed pattern held by someone who cannot explain it, preserved by people who trusted it more than they understood it, until the tools arrive. The healers are not the embarrassing prehistory of medicine. They are the part of it that gathered the data over 4,000 years in bad light, one wound at a time, and passed it forward without ever knowing what they had. Somewhere above you tonight, in the corner of a room, this is still happening. A spider is drawing a protein out of its own body at a speed it selects with its leg, converting liquid to solid without heat or pressure in a tube shorter than a gram. In of rice, building a structure it has never been shown, listening to it with organs that measure the width of an atom, and waiting. It will eat the whole thing before morning and build another. It has no idea that 100 laboratories are trying to copy what it is doing, or that people once took the same thread and pressed it into the worst moment of their lives, or that anything else exists at all beyond the tension in 8 lines. It is simply making silk in the dark, as its ancestors have done since before there were forests. And that is enough to have kept it here for 400 million years. Leeches were abandoned as a superstition and then brought back into modern surgery. Asterisk bloodletting with leeches was one of the great errors of medical history, applied to nearly every illness for centuries on the basis of a theory of bodily humors that was simply wrong, and it killed a great many people who needed the blood they had. The practice collapsed in the 19th century. Then, in the 1980s, reconstructive surgeons rediscovered a narrow and genuine use. When a finger or an ear is reattached, the arteries often reconnect before the veins do, and blood arrives faster than it can leave, congesting the tissue until it dies. A leech attached to the reattached part draws off the excess and, more importantly, injects Herudin, one of the most potent natural anticoagulants known, along with a vasodilator and a local anesthetic, keeping the site bleeding gently for hours after the animal detaches. Medicinal leeches are now cleared as medical devices. The oldest and most discredited treatment in Western medicine came back through a door nobody expected, and only after it had learned to be much smaller. Snake venom is used every day in hospital laboratories to test how well blood clots. Certain venoms contain enzymes that act on specific points in the coagulation cascade with extraordinary selectivity, and this makes them precise diagnostic reagents. Venom from Russell's viper activates factor X directly, bypassing the earlier steps, and is used in a test that helps identify a particular class of antibodies associated with abnormal clotting. Other venoms convert fibrinogen to fibrin without requiring any of the normal cofactors, allowing the measurement of fibrinogen itself. The animal evolved these molecules to destroy the clotting of something it wanted to eat. We use them to measure the clotting of someone we want to save. Nothing in nature is made for us. It is simply available, and occasionally it fits. A bruise changes color because hemoglobin is being taken apart in front of you. When blood leaks into tissue without breaking the skin, the red cells die and their hemoglobin is broken down by local macrophages in a sequence of chemical steps, each producing a differently colored compound. The initial red-purple is intact hemoglobin. As the iron-containing ring is opened, biliverdin forms, which is green. Biliverdin is reduced to bilirubin, which is yellow-brown. The pigments are cleared and the skin returns to normal, typically over 1 to 2 weeks. The changing colors of a bruise are not the wound getting worse and then better. They are a chemical reaction proceeding at its own pace, visible through the skin, and you can read roughly how many days old an injury is from the color alone. The same pigments, produced by the same breakdown pathway in the liver rather than the skin, are what turn a newborn infant faintly yellow in the first days of life, and what color a healing bruise on the arm of an adult. It is one of the few places where the body's internal chemistry is displayed on the outside, in ordinary daylight, where anyone at all can watch it happen and know roughly what day it is in the life of a small injury. Some parts of the body bleed far more than the injury deserves. A small cut on the scalp will produce an alarming quantity of blood, because the scalp is densely supplied with vessels that are held open by the fibrous tissue around them and cannot fully constrict when cut. The tongue and the inside of the mouth bleed heavily for similar reasons. The front of the nasal septum carries a convergence of vessels from several arteries, a region called Kieselbach's plexus, sitting just beneath a thin mucous membrane, which is why the overwhelming majority of nosebleeds come from that one small patch, and why pinching the soft part of the nose is the correct response. The amount of blood a wound produces is a poor guide to how serious it is. Some of the most frightening bleeding is trivial, and some of the most dangerous makes almost no mark at all. The redness of blood comes from a single iron atom held in a ring. Hemoglobin is 4 protein chains, each cradling a heme group, and at the center of each heme sits one atom of iron. That iron binds oxygen reversibly, and the binding shifts the electronic structure of the ring in a way that changes which wavelengths of light it absorbs, so oxygenated blood is bright scarlet and deoxygenated blood is a darker crimson, not blue, despite the appearance of veins through the skin, which is a trick of how light scatters in tissue. Each red cell carries around 250 million hemoglobin molecules. Your body builds roughly 2 million new red cells every second to replace the ones that wear out. The color of the substance we have used as the symbol of life in every culture that ever existed comes down to what happens to light when it meets an atom of iron in a particular chemical embrace. The whole system runs on a protein that is one of the most abundant things in your blood, and you will never notice it once. Fibrinogen circulates at concentrations of 2 to 4 grams per liter, which means an adult carries somewhere around 15 grams of it dissolved and drifting, doing nothing, at every moment. It is manufactured continuously by the liver, cleared and replaced on a cycle of a few days, maintained across every hour of your life whether or not you are ever injured. Most of it will never be used. It is held in reserve against a possibility, an enormous standing inventory of unfinished web, ready to be cut into shape by an enzyme that has not yet been called. Consider the quiet extravagance of that. Your body has been carrying the raw material for a repair that may never be needed, replacing it steadily as it ages, for every day you have been alive. Preparedness at that scale is not caution. It is simply what a living thing looks like when it intends to keep going. And now the light behind your eyes begins to go soft, and we come to the end of our journey through spider silk and stopped blood. We began in the corners of old rooms, with healers in Greece and Rome and rural England, and the American South reaching up for a gray handful of thread. And we followed that gesture down into the body, into the 4 seconds after a cut, into the vessel that tightens on its own, and the platelets that shatter from a parent cell in the marrow to be ready for it. We watched fibrin assemble itself into a web inside the wound, the body spinning the same shape the spider spins, and we found the ancient tripwire in the blood that fires on contact with any foreign surface, which is the real reason the old remedy ever worked at all. We stood beneath the webs of Darwin's bark spider, stretched 25 meters across a river in Madagascar, and watched spiders rise into the air on strands of silk, reading the electric field of the planet to decide when to let go. We held silk that shrinks in the morning dew and conducts heat better than metal, and followed it into laboratories where it becomes a tube to guide a severed nerve, a scaffold for new bone, a film that holds a vaccine steady in the heat, a membrane laid gently across the surface of an eye. We watched a bruise turn green and then yellow, and learned what time it is inside a single cell in your skin. There is nothing left to do now. Let the breath go long and low, and let it happen without your help. Feel the weight of your body against whatever is holding it, and let that surface take all of it, the arms, the shoulders, the small muscles around the eyes that have been working since morning. The day is closed. Whatever was unfinished will still be there and will still be manageable. And while you sleep, the repair goes on. Growth hormone rises in the first deep hours. Cells that could not spare the attention while you were awake begin their quiet work. You are not resting from the world so much as returning to the part of yourself that only operates in the dark. You are a part of this story, the same chemistry, the same ancient mesh, the same iron catching light. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. If you are still awake, another journey may be waiting for you on the screen, ready whenever you are. Sleep well and good night.